I lived in New York City my whole life. I lived through 9/11, I lived through the blackout, I lived through Sandy. So I started reading about disaster management, and I learned this term, left of the boom. The boom is the disaster. And if you're left of it, you prevent it. And if you're right of it, you work to mitigate the disaster after it's happened. The next disaster will be climate. What can we do left of the boom to make a difference?
My name is Tia Gordon, and I am the co-founder of It's Electric. It's Electric is electric vehicle charging specifically built for cities. We came to Newlab because we needed to pilot. And what's going on inside is that there's hundreds of companies like It's Electric building crazy things and finding ways for those crazy things to make their way out into the world. Newlab partners with city agencies, with private entities, with corporations to be able to find the need side of the equation, the funding side of the equation, and to bring this together.
I grew up designing clothes, and I was really excited to finally be joining this industry that I loved. And while I was at school, I learned how every single stage of production of the clothes that we wear have enormous impacts on our planet. Our mission is to make the fashion industry compatible with nature. So we're creating performance textile fibers that are biodegradable for color and performance without plastics and water pollution. I can't tell you how pivotal it has been for our company to be able to work on machinery that can translate to industrial manufacturing systems. We've been able to create that here and produce fibers on a whole different level.
Individual commute has a significant impact on individual carbon footprint. 50 to 60% of all urban passenger commutes are between 3 to 6 miles. What we are trying to do is say that, hey, a bicycle is perfect for that. You can impact your individual carbon footprint by between 15 to 20% easily. And that stacks up. Being here, you're part of this much larger network that Newlab connects you to, which brings us some of our most avid advocates and champions.
I think of Newlab in many ways as a convener of the powers that are needed to make change for technology in urban spaces. And they're the ones who have helped us move furthest, fastest.
Amazing. Tia, you made my job very easy. I think you said it very eloquently, so everyone gets it. Everyone gets what we're doing here. Hello, and thank you for joining us at the Newlab Pilot Showcase. If you're not familiar with Newlab, we're a venture platform focused on supporting and growing startups in industries that are really central to our sustainable future. So our platform takes a place-based approach to driving growth and velocity of deep tech startups, and as well as regional economic development. To do this, we bring together infrastructure, investment capital, and importantly, industry partners. And so what does that mean for you? Why are you sitting here today? Think of Newlab as a strategic partner, a bridge between the world-class innovation and tech development that's happening here and outside enterprises, government leaders, and investors seeking to accelerate their own sustainability agendas and, frankly, their businesses, especially because we know that the two are ever more deeply intertwined. And Newlab acts as a convener, thanks to you, and we create the conditions for unprecedented collaboration to happen. We bring together the right people, and we iterate on solutions. We get concepts from the lab, Newlab, out into the real world. And let's be honest, at this point in the game, it can be pretty easy for people to find startups, right? There's lots of tools and platforms and ways for you to find interesting companies. You can look at lots of pitch decks, but it can be much harder to actually imagine how you're gonna collaborate with that company. How does that startup's offering actually apply to the context of your business? How are you gonna actually get the opportunity to evaluate that team in action? And what about defining a pilot? And good luck. If you're actually successful with that pilot, what happens next? Really, all too often, we see in our work that these different collaborations die on the vine because the businesses and the partners who are brought to the table, they just don't have the mechanisms to actually effectively work together. So our mission is really to overcome these common pitfalls and enable you to partner more effectively with startups to realize those climate gains and those real advantages for your business. So our message for you today and beyond is pretty simple. Don't just review more pitch decks. You're welcome to look at pitch decks, but do something else too. Work with us. Let us help you to define a strategy that helps to bridge that gap between where we are in the present and the future that we're really trying to get to. And join us in working shoulder to shoulder with startups to define use cases, deploy tech, and really get the chance to analyze real data and learnings in order to figure out what comes next and then really be empowered and enabled to take that next step. So today is all about introducing you to several startups from our community. They're representative of our much larger network of startups, but we're particularly jazzed about these companies. We really believe their technologies are novel. They're working on things that are urgent and are much needed. So we're really excited to kind of pull back the curtain and let you get a closer look at these companies and the work that we've been doing together. We also think these companies provide kind of a nice tie back to our core focus areas of energy, materials, and mobility. We really do believe that these solutions and approaches that these companies are taking are critical to decarbonize our economy. So one last thing I'll leave you with. Everyone in this room has a role to play. Believe it or not, 1,300 people wanted to be in your seat today. 1,300 people wanted to be with us today. Hopefully many of them are joining on the live stream. But for those of you in the room with us, we chose you to be here because we do believe that there's really work that we can do together. So enjoy the day, listen to these amazing presentations, meet each other, get curious. Please connect with the Newlab team. We would really love to start a conversation, learn more about you, and see if there are different ways that we can serve as that convener and help to connect the dots and do something impactful together. So now I'm gonna bring up to the stage our next speaker. We're really thrilled and honored to have with us Marisa Lago, the Undersecretary of Commerce for International Trade.
Thank you, Shana. There are so many reasons that I am excited to be here today, and it starts with the fact that I am a proud native of Brooklyn. I grew up on the South Brooklyn waterfront, a short distance from here, in the 1950s when it was still an active working waterfront, and my grandfather was a cook on a tugboat operating out of the Brooklyn Harbor. We can then fast forward to the 70s when, don't let it leave this room, as a teenager, I knew where the holes were in the fence around the Navy Yard, and we used to sneak into the yard, largely abandoned, and just loved roaming around Admiral's Row and going down to the dry docks. Fast forward a little bit more, I worked for New York State, and I headed economic development, and my team was responsible for taking the then abandoned Brooklyn piers and turning them into Brooklyn Bridge Park, which has turned into not just a city treasure, but a major international tourist destination. And then most recently, in 2021, right before my current role, I was the chair of the New York City Planning Commission, and we did a massive rezoning of the Navy Yard so that it can grow for the next 50 years without needing to get discretionary approvals. So just setting the stage for the future of this gem. And one final personal admission. I love being in this crowd because in the 1970s, I got my BS in physics from Cooper Union. I was a STEM girl before they'd even invented the term STEM. But the main reason I'm glad, so those are my Brooklyn bona fides. But the main reason I'm here is because of you, the startups that are here. You are the lifeblood of the economy, not just of the city, not just of the nation, but of the globe. I'm also pleased, having had a career in financial services, to see the investors who are here. You are part of driving, of nurturing the groundbreaking solutions that are made here at the Navy Yard every day. So I'm here to tell you about an agency that I have the privilege of leading. It is part of the Department of Commerce, and it's called the International Trade Administration, or ITA for short. And our goal is to promote inclusive economic growth, specifically through international trade. My team spans over 2,300 trade and business experts. But the best part is that only a small number of them are located in Washington, D.C. We have folks in over 80 global locations, and they are paired up with trade and business experts in over 100 locations within the U.S., including in Harlem, in downtown Manhattan, just a short ferry ride away from here, but also in Long Island, Westchester, Rochester, and Buffalo. At the Commerce Department, we have the Bureau of Economic Analysis, so we really love statistics. And to give you a sense of the scope, every single day, around $85 billion worth of goods and services are traded across the globe. That $85 billion is about 80% of Brooklyn's entire annual economy, and that's moving around the globe every day. And it ranges from the smartphones that we're addicted to, the groceries that we buy. Trade sustains how billions of people live and make their living. And every May, we celebrate World Trade Month. But boosting trade isn't just the flow of products. It really is about driving innovation. And at ITA, we are proud to promote the most cutting-edge U.S. technologies, and in particular, in tackling the climate change challenges. Now, those of you who are here with startups that may be a few months or even a few years old, you're probably thinking, why are you talking to me about international trade? Isn't that just for the big multinational corporations? But the reality is that at ITA, 85% of our clients are micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises. So we serve from the smallest businesses to the largest businesses. And so I hope that you'll leave here with a sense that your innovative technology has the potential to expand to international markets and to help other countries around the globe meet their climate commitments. So no matter the size of your business, our team at ITA has resources to help you. So what is it that we do when we work with a business like yours? We identify and screen potential international buyers or partners that we believe would be a good match for your business. We help you understand the incredibly complex international regulations and how to comply with them and not run afoul of another country's requirements. We provide extensive industry-specific data and analysis that help you make business decisions, such as identifying what are the latest international trends, what are the top export markets for specific sectors, be it clean energy, transportation, advanced manufacturing. We also lead trade missions in which we take U.S. businesses, and again, a special emphasis on micro, small, and medium-sized businesses, and we bring them abroad and connect them with potential distributors and partners. We set up tailored meetings, both with foreign government officials and foreign executives. I sometimes joke that I run one of the world's largest business-to-business speed dating service. And finally, we curate targeted networking opportunities with influential local chambers of commerce's, industry associations, and business councils where we can plant the seeds for new international deals. Now, on the climate crisis in particular, we have been laser focused on promoting climate and clean energy solutions across the globe. It is such a point of pride to be able to advocate with foreign government officials who have a procurement pending and to advocate on behalf of U.S. companies that can help our foreign partners meet their energy goals. Now, I'll give you a recent example. Recently, I traveled to Brussels, and it was for the International Atomic Energy Agency's first ever nuclear energy summit. And when we talk about clean energy, of course, we think about solar, wind, hydrogen, ammonia. But in fact, here in the US, half of our country's carbon-free electricity is generated from civil nuclear energy. And so I used this conference, which brought together heads of state from 40 countries around the globe, to meet with my foreign government counterparts from Sweden to the United Arab Emirates to Korea, advocating for US companies that offer top-notch civil nuclear energy solutions that drastically can cut carbon emissions. Another example, just last December, I led the largest ever ITA delegation to Dubai for the United Nations Annual Climate Conference, COP28 to those in the know. And there we emphasize that US companies are absolutely part of the solution to the globe's energy transitions. I want to mention another part of the Department of Commerce, which is the US Patent and Trademark Office. It's a sister agency, and they are another part of why the US is admired as an innovation technology, because we know that in order to foster innovation, one has to protect the innovation economy, one has to protect the intellectual property. The Patent and Trademark Office is comprised of over 10,000 engineers, scientists, and lawyers. And again, they have very specific efforts to reach out to micro, small, and medium enterprises. The final thing that I should mention is dollars, since we know that there is a focus on investment here. With the Inflation Reduction Act, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, and the CHIPS and Science Act, these are three monumental pieces of legislation that are investing over $1 trillion in US industries and the technologies of the future. As part of this funding, the Commerce Department has designated 31 different tech hubs across the US, including 2 in New York State, and they span from Binghamton to Syracuse. Later this year, a subset of these tech hubs are going to be selected in a very competitive process to receive regional grants ranging from $40 to $70 million each. So there's some scale there. And as a proud Brooklynite, I am so pleased to see that the federal government is looking through the Tech Hubs program to emulate exactly what is going on here at the Brooklyn Navy Yard. I'll close by making an ask of you. It is so clear that government alone doesn't nearly have all of the solutions. It's the ingenuity of the private sector, including folks here in this room. And so please keep innovating, keep pushing the boundaries, keep doing the crazy stuff that was mentioned in the video. And as you are planning the growth of your business, think about exporting internationally, because we'd love to partner with you. Thank you.
Please welcome to the stage your host, Jacob Simon. Round of applause.
Hey everyone. Okay, we're on. How's everyone doing today? Yeah, happy to be here. Yeah, me too, me too. Just stalling for 1 second while we get my notes up here. But it's a beautiful day out. The sun is shining. It's a good one. We're very lucky to be here. I am super excited alongside all of you. And we'll get started in a second. I'll start to introduce myself. My name is Jacob Simon. I am an environmental communicator, a content creator, and an independent news reporter. And usually I start my videos by saying, for the first and only time, it's today's date, which today would be May 7th, 2024. Here's some examples of the content that I usually tell. I'm going to pull up my backup notes here. I'll be hosting today's event. Super excited to be here. And like I said, I'm a climate communicator, educator, and independent news reporter. And I just focus on good news and positivity in the environment. And usually when I say that to people, they're shocked and surprised. And they say, is there any good news in the environment? And of course there is, or else I would kind of be out of a job and unemployed. But there's actually kind of the opposite problem. I find so many good stories, and even more than I'm able to tell. And all of us gathering here today is a perfect example of the kind of positive story that I love to report on. I mean, we're all gathered for collaboration and openly sharing how we can generate something really special and solutions to a real problem that the world faces. And all that's coming together for quite this special event, the Pilot Showcase 2024, and to me, that definitely is a good news story. Like I said, I start most of my videos by saying, for the first and only time, it's today's date, to serve as a reminder for how special each day really is. We get bogged down with our work from time to time, or whatever we're doing, and we forget that each moment won't happen again. And just for that alone, it's already something special. But today is special for so many more reasons too. See, traditional news is dominated by negativity, particularly when it comes to the kind of stuff that we're working on. But there's plenty of forward progress and promise happening too. It just isn't always as loud and isn't always reported on, frankly, because it doesn't get the same reaction and the same amount of clicks. We're all gathered here for the incredible Pilot Showcase 2024 at one of the coolest places in Brooklyn. And just take a look around and recognize that everyone here is choosing to not only be here and not only work on protecting our planet and dedicating our working lives to fixing this uphill battle, but genuinely spending half of our days, if not more, let's be honest, to figuring out how we can win this fight. And you know, we don't have to be here, I think. I mean, if you're forced to be here, then I'm sorry, but it's still gonna be a really fun day. But we are here because we believe in that better future. And I'm full of energy today because there's going to be 8 startups showing off what they've been working on alongside a few panels in this stunning building, thanks to Newlab. There's a tour you'll be going on later, so I won't ruin too much of the surprise, but they literally used to build Navy ships inside of this building. I had never thought about how Navy ships are built before, but that's pretty insane to me. And now over 150 companies work here side by side, figuring out solutions. And for a sense of how massive this place is, I'm pretty sure my New York City apartment just about fits on this stage. And there's another top floor of this building that Newlab themselves might not even know about. Today, we are getting a direct look at several Newlab member companies that have piloted their technology in the real world. For those of us here with our heads down working too hard every day, the real world is here. It's face-to-face, it's in person, it's 3D. Sorry to everyone streaming in, but but as important as ideation and innovation is, implementation is the real gem. That's what these new technologies are doing. They're game changers in moving the status quo, developing new products, expanding markets, and as we'll see shortly, are already set up for success. These teams can and will explain themselves better than I can. But as someone who focuses on telling good stories, it's genuinely quite inspiring being here in this room, getting to talk to all of you change makers today. I'm increasingly learning that problems aren't just solved, they get solved. By hard work and dedicated people, and innovation and connections and risks, and all of that comes together in a place like this, in an event like today. Each of these deep tech startups are operating in one of 3 of the biggest impact areas for the most people: energy, mobility, and materials. And these 3 combined make up the majority of greenhouse emissions in the US. And of course, today wouldn't happen without the support of Newlab, and these folks couldn't possibly introduce themselves, so I came to the rescue. You're welcome. First up today are the startups working in mobility, which is literally getting people and things from one place to another in the best way possible. Mobility makes up 28% of greenhouse gas emissions and is the most heavily reliant on fossil fuels, but problem solvers are tackling this through electrification, logistics, sustainable fuels, and better urban infrastructure. My specialty is telling positive stories, which I'll tell plenty of today, but one more before we get started. The ground is literally being laid for the nation's first road that charges your electric vehicle as you drive over it. And it's happening at the front door of Newlab's second headquarters in Detroit, Michigan, by Newlab member Electrion, partnering with Michigan Central, the state of Michigan, DTE, the city of Detroit, and a few others. They basically put underground coils beneath the road that get activated by your electric vehicle when you drive on it and lets you charge up as you go. And yeah, if you're living in New York City like me, you probably don't really know how to drive anymore, but they're being very strategic with their implementation, focusing first and foremost on bus routes and on like logistical freight corridors. And this maximizes the road's impact and will shrink battery sizes while increasing range, reducing demand on the power grid. And if you think that's cool, just wait for what's next. Please give a warm round of applause as we welcome our first mobility demo to the stage.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sahil Jain, and I'm a VP at Newlab. I've been with the team for several years, and I'm really excited today to introduce our first startup, Mythos AI. Mythos AI are disrupting the maritime logistics space by developing technologies to autonomize shipping in maritime. We had the pleasure of working with the Mythos AI team last year and helping them do a first-of-a-kind pilot in the Great Lakes through our partnership with Michigan Central. As Jeff will explain later on today, in our platform in Michigan, we've been working with the Port of Monroe, a strategic port on one of our country's most important waterways, the Great Lakes, and helped the port actually think about applying this autonomous technology and hydrographic surveying in order to improve the port's capabilities of taking in different types of ships. So without further ado, I'm excited to introduce Jeff Douglas to the stage, the CEO of Mythos AI.
Thank you, guys. It's great to be here. It's a beautiful day in New York, and I hope I get to kind of educate you guys on something you probably aren't super aware of. So my name is Jeff Douglas. I'm CEO, co-founder of Mythos AI. I met my co-founders many years ago developing autonomy for the US Navy. At one point, they left. They started developing self-driving car tech for Uber, for Lyft, for Argo AI. They came back to me a few years ago and said, Jeff, the marine industry is truly in the Stone Age, and we learned warp drive. We want to develop autonomy for an industry that actually needs it. And that's what we set out to do at Mythos AI. The first products we're creating accelerate the decarbonization of the shipping industry. Shipping is currently the 5th largest emitter of greenhouse gas emissions. If it were a country, it emits the equivalent amount of the country of Japan. And though moving goods around on ships is a very good way to move goods, the system is actually extremely inefficient. And one of the largest inefficiencies in shipping is caused by the fact that we are unable to update navigation charts as quickly as the depths change. At ports all around the globe, we actually don't know at any given time how deep the water is. How do you load a ship if you don't know how deep the water is? Well, you do it safely. You light load them. You go, we don't know how deep it is. Let's put less stuff on these ships so they're lighter in the water. There have been studies that have found that if we can get up-to-date depth data to the industry faster, we can increase the efficiency of moving vessels around the globe by as much as 30%. And this is what we set out to do with our entry to market. And this brings us to our pilot project, and it's kind of the crux of the problem here. This is an image of the Port of Monroe. Please note all of this stuff kicked up, right, on the screen. This is sedimentation. Every single time we move a ship in and around a berth, we move the bottom. The thrusters from the tugs kick up sedimentation in one spot. They move it to other spots. We end up with low spots and high spots. It's faster than we can actually chart it. So therefore, this causes huge vulnerabilities in the supply chain. How do we know if it's safe? And this ends up backing up shipping. So at and you might say, Jeff, this is crazy. We've been moving stuff around forever, right? How is it that we don't have up-to-date depth data? Well, we don't. What you're looking at is the most up-to-date depth information available at the Port of Monroe right now. It's provided by the federal government. The white area is the shipping channel. These vertical things are cross-sections they take for depth measurements. And these are numbers. They read like 20 feet, 19 feet, 18 feet. But please note that this area down here in blue, this is where the ships tie up, and there's no data there. So it's great that we understand maybe how deep it was in September of 2023, but we don't know how deep the berth is. So how do we still know if we can get these ships in? Shipping companies have to tie together all sorts of different information to try to make these plans. It's very risky. So at Mythos, we were aware of this, and we created Archie. Consider it a Roomba for the ports. Traditionally, hydrographic survey is extremely challenging. It takes highly skilled people, many weeks, sometimes months, to turn something around into something industry can use, and in that time, the bottom changes. So we automated the whole process. What you're seeing here on the left, you can box an area, our boat will fill it with data. That's this yellow stream, it's like a 3D point cloud. On the right, which is really tricky, and I'll get to later, Mythos is developing autonomy and self-driving in the ports while we are mapping. And what we spit out is this. This is a comprehensive 3D model of the seabed. This is a digital twin to ensure the safety of navigation and therefore the economic security of the ports and states that are adopting our technology. Newlab was aware of us, thankfully. I love Newlab, I just want everybody to know that. They're like been one of the greatest things that happened to us. And they pitched this to the Port of Monroe. Port of Monroe went, I need this. We're actually concerned that we're gonna start losing business because shipping companies don't understand how deep it is, if it's safe or not to get their ships in and out of here. And Michigan Central backed the project, which was awesome for us. Port of Monroe, so everybody knows, is where this little red star is. It's down in the bottom of Michigan. It's very close to other ports in Ohio. It's actually a pretty competitive little area in the Great Lakes. And the port director said, hey, I need you to survey everywhere the federal government's currently responsible to do it. I need up-to-date data in these areas so I can inform shipping. And so he said, for an 8-week period, I want you to survey every time a ship comes into port. And we did. And he said, I want you to survey every single time a ship leaves port. And we did. And then he said, I need you to put it in a platform that I can share with everybody, my shipping customers, so that I can prove to them it's safe to come here, to the Army Corps of Engineers, so I can tell them exactly where I need dredging, to my engineering firm, so I can plan the future expansion of my port. And we did that. What you're looking at is a screenshot of a digital twin of the Port of Monroe. It's a 2D view of a 3D model of the port. It's all web-based, so he can share the link with his customers. And this is the exact same, this is zoomed in, this is the exact same area I showed you earlier where there's a lot of missing data, right? And we learned a lot. This captures what's going on. I hope you guys can see this from the podium, but these green areas, these are deep spots. The red areas, yellow areas, shallower. What's happening is the tugs are moving ships into the berth, and the thrusters are digging holes here and here and here, and they are filling in the waterway. And this area where there's actually no data available to the industry, it's the shallowest part of the port. So this is the crux of the problem that we're solving here at Mythos AI, getting this data to everybody that needs it as soon as they can. You're actually seeing 2 data sets overlapped on each other. So the first time ever, not only is it real-time data, he can say, hey, how did it behave over a 6-week period? And we found that over 6 weeks, the deep areas got deeper, the shallow areas got shallower, and in some areas as much as half a foot. A half a foot of cargo on a ship can be a couple $1 million worth of stuff. Or it could be the difference between running aground and not running aground. So this is super valuable information. The port director has it. He can share it with his customers. He can ensure the economic vitality of his port and the future expansion of it. So outcomes, they were able to secure customers. They were really concerned that they might lose them because they couldn't supply this information. They told us they secured them. Port of Monroe also has the country's, Michigan's first container terminal is being built there. And so they're taking this data platform and they're presenting it to future customers to secure their business. You should come here. We can ensure the navigational safety of our port versus the other ports in the region. For Mythos, this is a win. Port director told us what to build. We built it. So we got product market fit. We took it to other ports and states and DOTs all around the country. And we have secured a significant sales pipeline with this exact data offering. We have also on A16Z's list of top 50 American dynamism AI companies, and they specifically mentioned this pilot project in the write-up about that. So one other huge win for us on this is while we were surveying, we're training autonomy. And what you're looking at is one of our vessels navigating a very tight channel in Florida at 30 miles an hour. It is avoiding channel markers. It is avoiding other vessels. It is obeying the rules of the road. This is the most advanced self-driving vessel technology that we're aware of. This is the future of mobility. Think autonomous ferries, autonomous people movers, and autonomous cargoes in cities like New York. This is the future of recreation. Boating is super hard. If we make it easy, we can scale the market. If we're controlling it with autonomy, we can ensure that people aren't destroying the environment that they're enjoying. And this is the future of shipping. In Michigan, there's a huge workforce shortage of mariners. Actually, this is global. There's hundreds of thousands of people short. Shipping companies are trying to figure out how do we scale to meet demand of the global markets. And they are looking at autonomy as a single solution to do that. So we're currently fundraising to bring these products to market for the industry. And we're also actively connecting with other states and DOTs who want to ensure the economic resilience of their ports, which ensures the economic resilience of their local economies. So that's it for Mythos AI. This is the really exciting stuff that we've been building for Newlab through this pilot. So thank you, guys. Sorry, are we hanging out for? Okay. Okay, got it. Sorry, Q&A. Who's got something for me? Go for it. Right now, we're raising $3 to $4 million. Absolutely, that would be a much better number. Cool, thank you. That'd be great. You guys let me off that easy?
Can you talk a little bit more about your concept for autonomous freight on more of a local level, like, for example, moving goods around something like New York Harbor?
Yes, absolutely. So this gets into the strategy of what we're doing, so it's going to be a little bit of a long answer. We are training autonomy while we're providing this depth data. If you want to train autonomy, you need to be where it's really, really busy. You can look at the self-driving car industry. They're in the cities. And that makes, adaptive cruise control on this highway very easy, right? Right now in the marine domain, everyone's developing autonomy offshore. And it's like a desert. You can never get those systems into the busy environments first because it will never be safe to do so. So we offer services in and around these cities and these port environments because it's really busy and we can be manned training the autonomy. It's actually allowing us to accelerate the rate in which we develop the unmanned systems or the ability to become unmanned in the future in these very busy environments. So like we have a system that could theoretically operate unmanned in and around Port Monroe. Like we have enough data, we have enough training sets to do that, right? We need to partner with the cities and states that want to see this future for them, just like the self-driving cars do, because we have to be in the waterways training the autonomy. And so it becomes a very iterative process. At first, this starts as ADAS for ferries and ships and data services like we're doing right now. We put them on the vessels. The captain's actually the ones that begin training the autonomy. And in time, we work with the regulators and start kind of rolling it out until we can get to an unmanned future. But it's not safe right now to just let unmanned systems rip in our waterways. In our opinion, we really need to roll it out in a very mature way. And it's a way that we learned from the self-driving car industry, along with those regulators. So, did I answer your question? Yeah. Okay, cool. Cool.
Do you care about the waves in your autonomy?
I don't see where that question came from. Sorry, I'm like blinded.
It's okay, I'm back here.
Okay, sorry, okay. Do we care about the waves? So it depends. It's like kind of a loaded question. One thing about autonomy in the marine domain, people think it's really hard because there's waves and currents and things. And at low speeds, it becomes more challenging. At high speeds, though, controllers like something to push against. So actually, the fact that there's winds and waves make it easier to control the systems. So it's not such a big problem. In terms of sea state and comfort, that's part of the development process. Where is New York? We have to operate in New York or in Miami or in Texas. When does it get busy? How rough does it get? How does that equate to the motions of these vessels? And that becomes part of the iterative design process of the autonomy.
Thank you. I actually have three. So the capital raise right now, can you just discuss what the uses will be?
Yes, yeah. So one use of the raise is to take what we made and showed you at the end, and we have to basically, in terms of tracking, targeting, identifying, we've built that whole pipeline. We need to package up the GUI in a way that really speaks to the industry. It's like we want to design, develop, and push the most state-of-the-art tech and interface for ships. And so we're hiring UX, UI individuals so we can package that up and start launching that. We're through this pilot, we're in discussions with shipping companies in the Great Lakes about rolling this out, which is awesome.
I'm from Michigan, so
Cool.
I'm very happy about that. I guess my two other questions regarding maritime insurance. To what extent do you see that evolving for AI or autonomous ships? And second, and lastly, are you intending to roll this out to the sort of autonomous tugs or piloting ships in harbors?
So to get to your last question first about are we planning on rolling this out for autonomous tugs and ships, eventually our vision is that if it floats and it's doing work, it will have some level of autonomy on it. It will be required. We need to turn the supply chain into something that looks more like a conveyor belt of goods moving around the globe. And all of the, right now it's a broken system, it's not even close to that. And that's where autonomy is going with this. So yes, in the long run, yes, it's an iterative process to get there. In terms of the underwriters, we believe the underwriters will become the largest customers and proponents. In fact, on the data side, we have letters of support for government grants from underwriters. They're going, oh, you can give us data that we can understand what happens in the lower Mississippi when there's a drought in the upper Mississippi? We've never had that. We can understand the risk of the waterways that we're operating these ships in. That's never existed. So the underwriters, at the end of the day, we believe will be one of the largest customers that we have when we start really rolling this out. On the autonomy side, it's the same thing. We have Coast Guard approved autonomy and self-driving in the lower Mississippi River. This is the busiest waterway in North America. They don't even allow autopilot. We have it because we do a risk assessment. Hey, what happens when an engine dies? Well, we have 2 engines, so we have a backup. Okay, cool. What happens when your autonomy fails? Well, right now we have a human on board, so we have a backup. But what happens when the human has a heart attack? Well, we have another driver on board. It's the autonomy, right? In time, it'll be like, well, the autonomy has done a better job than the human for 5,000 hours, so there's actually safer than having a human. And this is where the underwriters will get behind the technology.
All right, round of applause for Jeff. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Tom Comboy. I'm a program manager here on the Newlab team. Excited to see so many familiar faces in the audience. I am so excited to introduce this next team in the mobility sector to present for you all. It's Electric, who has really positioned themselves as a mover and a shaker in the EV charging hardware landscape in the past few years. It's Electric is an EV charging company that partners with property owners to unlock access to untapped electricity supply while they earn passive income, revolutionizing EV charger proliferation and adoption in urbanized areas. The company joined Newlab in 2022, just as Newlab began to explore curbside charging innovation with strategic government partners here in New York. In just a few short years, the company has expanded to multiple pilot programs, including pilots around Newlab's home bases. So in Detroit, at the Detroit Smart Parking Lab, and here in Newlab at the Brooklyn Navy Yard, we have something in the works right in the courtyard, which you'll see later today. So, It's Electric is poised for explosive growth as a solution well-positioned to tackle the thorny challenge of flexibly charging electric vehicles in urban environments. With that, I'll stop there and let It's Electric tell you themselves what they've been up to lately. So please, let's give a great round of applause for Tia Gordon, co-founder and COO at It's Electric.
Hey,
It's great to be here. Hi, everyone. My name is Tia Gordon, and I am the co-founder of It's Electric. We solve the largest barriers that cities face in the deployment of public charging. Right now in this country, there's about 100,000 public level 2 chargers, and the country wants to go to 1 million, and that's in 6 years' time. Right here in this city, thanks to the ambition and the clarity of our leadership in the Department of Transportation, there's a target of 10,000 level 2 chargers, also in that same time frame. And because I like to be topical, let's all agree those chargers are not going to be Tesla. But it's okay, because they never were. In the world of EV charging, there's 3 big buckets. There's home charging, which is really the best way to charge your EV. It's how 85% of drivers will charge their vehicles when they have that garage, when they're lucky enough to have that garage. The second bucket is fast charging. We've got the NEVI funding, building out a network in this country along the highway every 50 miles, and that's on top of the existing supercharger network. But then there's this final frontier, and that's urban charging, and that's where we come in. What we do at It's Electric is we allow a charger to be deployed anywhere where there's a building and a curb. And we do this in 2 days at 1/10 the cost of the incumbent. We do this by avoiding what we consider to be the largest barrier that cities face in the deployment of public charging, and that's any requirement or reliance on the utility. Because we merely power our chargers from the spare capacity in adjacent buildings. By running a small conduit just below the sidewalk, as opposed to connecting to the main utility line in the street, which involves transformers and submeters and inter-utility connections and permits, or trying to get the utility to upgrade circuit capacity in existing street furniture. The beauty of It's Electric is that urban density that we all see as we look everywhere as we go in any city, that becomes the barrier for everyone else, for us is the solution. Because when we look at a city, every building is a charger. And why would a building let us do this? Because we rev share. We're providing thousands of dollars a year to that building, offsetting their annual utility cost. We ended 2023 being named the next big thing in tech by Fast Company, and we started 2024 being named top innovator by the World Economic Forum. So this has caught the attention of a lot of groups with our solution. We are the country's only UL-certified detachable cable solution, and we're also behind the meter, and this is very much in demand. Detachable cable, you say, and we say in response, not weird, just European. And it's really important because cables are problematic for 3 reasons, all the attached cable solutions. First is that they break. The attached cable on a public charger is always the first component to break. People charge, they mic drop, that cable hits the ground, it hits the pavement, it breaks, it's down for sometimes weeks, sometimes months, sometimes forever, until that actual unit is entirely replaced. The second advantage of a detachable cable solution is interoperability. So we give drivers the cable that they need. Tesla drivers all get their NACS cable, Audi, BMW, Hyundai get their CCS until everyone ultimately gets their NACS cable in a few years. And then the third reason is that we've removed the big, the bad, the ugly. We are designed to be placed on the residential streets where people are already parking their cars overnight. We want to be as ubiquitous as a fire hydrant, and we want to blend right in. So we just want to be that small bollard that sits there, and the only time you see the cable is when the car is actually attached and charging. I always get asked this question, so I'll say that the cable blocks on both ends when it's charging, so there can't be vandalism or opportunistic vandalism. All in all, in the last 6 months, in addition to having been awarded a $1.5 million federal grant from the Joint Office of Energy and Transportation to deploy in 4 cities and to create what we're calling a national curbside charging toolkit for the country, we've also been awarded 3 additional cities through competitive RFPs and grants. And all of this started through our very first pilot, exactly 1 year ago here in Brooklyn for our MVP, or our minimum viable product. That pilot, now known as Pilot Zero, was the very first for New York City's Climate Innovation Pilot Program, which allows for climate tech companies to use city assets to scale their tech. And now we're moving from MVP to MRP. You can walk outside and see our market-ready chargers. They're sitting there, obviously not plugged in, but they are ready to go. We're really excited about this. And we right-sized our first order. So we designed these are our chargers. but we manufacture them domestically here in the United States. And we made that first order 75 chargers. 2 of these are going to be baptized in the concrete of Newlab right outside the doors. The other one is in Detroit, and it's already up and running 24/7, 365, free for open charging for dozens of drivers across vehicle makes, across models, across external conditions, for us to measure and refine performance. And this is happening truly in the lab of Newlab. It's not a wet lab, it's not a dry lab, it is a real-world lab, and it's right outside our door. This is a critical tool. We will be testing these chargers vigorously for 1 year across 2 cities and constantly monitoring, again, in a real-world lab. This is to make sure that we are fully and completely ready when we roll these chargers out into the wider world very shortly. Just to kind of show you how fast we're moving, you'll see what the quality of the product is outside, but then I'm going to go to a video now that shows you what we did exactly 1 year ago. So easy peasy. We anticipate the use of these 3 chargers in our 2 Newlab locations is going to transfer about 1,900 kilowatt hours per month to our drivers. It's going to provide charging to up to 30 drivers, and it's really going to allow us to finalize and polish and primp and do everything we need to do before our next order of a couple of hundred chargers goes in and is then sent to 7 cities across the United States in 2024. My ask of this audience is that as we are cars powered by buildings, if you know any people who own a building or an apartment or a house in several cities, that's Boston, DC, Detroit, LA, Alexandria, Jersey City, come find me, come email me at hello@itselectric.us. We're looking for our property partners to be able to start to deploy in our first 7 cities, and we'd love to have them sign up. If you're here today, come find me or my colleagues Nathan and Shannon, who are wandering around Newlab Brooklyn. If you are watching this live streamed, come see our colleague in Detroit, Dante. And we're so glad to be here, and we are just so grateful to be part of this Newlab community. It truly has made us move further, faster. And Shayna, I'm not sure if I coined that or if you did, but it works. So thanks so much, everyone.
Raise your hand for Q&A for Tia. Does anyone have a question?
Hi, can you talk a little bit about your supply chain? Here.
Okay.
Can you talk a little bit about your supply chain for your hardware, as well as how you're going to be building your installer base?
Of course. So in terms of supply chain, we're Buy America, Build America. So we manufacture right now in Connecticut, and we are able to produce about 1,000 units per month. We're also moving manufacturing in part or possibly in whole over to Detroit to take advantage of the incredible automotive ecosystem that's building out there. In terms of operations and maintenance, we have a strong relationship with Charger Help. Camille Terry, the founder of Charger Help, is one of our earliest advisors, and she confirmed what breaks on chargers and basically helped us address very early on what we wanted to target. So in every city that we roll out, we bring Charger Help with us. They do O&M, but they also do workforce training and upskill labor for electricians. So we're not only bringing infrastructure, but we're bringing economic benefit through RevShare, and we're bringing jobs into communities.
So you said that this is typically going to be used when people are maybe coming home from work and plugging in their car outside their home. That's obviously when there's also a lot of peak demand in the household level. How are you planning on kind of coordinating that charging to avoid overloading the panel at the home and then also at the substation level once those chargers are more proliferated?
Of course. So the phrase that you're going to be hearing a lot over the next few years is something called a managed charging strategy, right? So we exist to help utilities boost those managed charging strategies. Even though, like we said, we never have to lift up the phone to call a utility, we've done the work to be diligenced by a variety of utilities across this country. And we have letters of support. They're excited to work with us because what we're trying to do is to get everyone to charge when demand is lowest, between the hours of, let's say, after 9 p.m. and 6 a.m. I'd like to say, unless you're my mom, you're not running your dryer between midnight and 4 a.m. And so therefore, this is when you really want to use those utilities, those appliances as much as you can. We also have within our software the ability to load balance and have that charger turn on and off based on demand. But the more we can move people towards that overnight charging strategy, the better off we'll be in terms of grid sustainability. However, we cannot do that if we are having people rely on what's known as a destination charge, because you can't do an overnight charge in any kind of convenient way if you're going to a parking lot.
Yes, sorry. Have you worked with local governments, I'd say, like firehouses, police precincts? I'm from Richmond, Virginia, and our firehouses were in neighborhoods in the city. If that was like a dedicated charging spot for, the block around the firehouse, that would work and provide revenue, if you will, to the fire department or police department.
Yeah, no, we would love to do something like that. I'm not sure what the parking regulations are for firehouses, given the trucks, but we would love to build relationships with fire departments across the country. In Detroit, where we're deploying, just to give you a sense of sort of like how we're agnostic in terms of building typology. We are installing in front of a two-family house. We're installing in front of a donut shop. We are installing in front of a Russian bathhouse. We are installing in front of a hospital. So we are truly typology agnostic, and I would love to add firehouse to that list.
Any other questions for Tia? Oh, we've got one over there, Jamie.
Thanks. Just wondering with that agnostic topology, what happens with change of ownership and agreements?
That's a great question. So we tie the partner property agreements to the duration of the contracts we have with the city. So if we're given a 2-year contract in the city or a 10-year contract in the city, that's what it ties to. If that building has a changeover or a turnover of hands in that time, we can do a remote disconnect. We can then remove it in a matter of an hour because it's basically it's modular. It's like a Lego. So there's the subgraded component, and then that can just get a little plate on top of it, and then we pop the top off and take it away. So we're built to be flexible. We understand that everything is ever changing. In cities, there are their own microorganisms that we have to work within.
Thank you so much, Tia.
Yeah.
We are going to send Jacob back up.
All right, one more time for Mythos AI and Intellectric. Thank you so much to the teams for all your hard work and for coming up here to demonstrate what's going on. Thanks to all of you for asking your questions. Keep them coming. It's always my favorite part. Now, if you ate too much for breakfast and you're not hungry yet, that's on you because it's lunchtime.
Cabinets deployed at several locations across Manhattan and Brooklyn. And to do so, we've been working really closely with our partners at DOT, who are in the audience, partners at FDNY, New York City Economic Development Corporation, the Mayor's Office of Tech and Innovation. The list goes on. There's a lot of different parties that really have to come together to deploy tech in the public right-of-way in New York City. And you heard me say, we've been working together for the better part of the last year. That may sound like a long time, but in terms of getting a new technology on the streets of New York City, that's lightning speed. So it's really, it's moved quickly. You see the DOT team giving thumbs up to that one. So the pilot is currently live that you're going to be hearing about today, and we are in a phase right now of monitoring, evaluation, getting feedback, and that's incredibly important because the city is going to be using the insights and the learnings from this pilot to inform their long-term strategy and investment into safe, accessible charging infrastructure for the city. So this is a pilot with a real purpose, and we're thrilled to have played a small part in bringing it to life. So I won't steal David's thunder, but I will say that at least anecdotally, the outpouring of support for this type of technology has been incredible. There's been delivery workers showing up in droves to get onboarded to the system and to give this a try. So it's been a success all around. So with that, I'm going to welcome to the stage David Hammer to tell you more about it.
All right. Hi, folks. I'm David Hammer. Together with Baruch Hertzfeld, we're the co-founders of Pop Wheels. And what do? We think we've cracked the code to deploying municipal scale battery swapping here in the United States. So look, you don't have to be a visionary to look for urban scale battery swapping. All you really have to do is get on a plane. In cities from Taipei to Delhi and everywhere in between, you're now starting to see over the last few years municipal scale battery swapping infrastructure for micromobility. Companies like Gogoro you may have heard of, but there's dozens you haven't, ranging from supporting trikes and three-wheeled scooters all the way to bikes. But it hasn't made its way here yet. It's not in North America, it's barely in Europe. It's really still a green field, and the question is why? And the answer is what problem are you solving? What is the problem? Where is the problem that merits this technology? In New York, we have two. One you might have heard about, the other you might not have heard about yet. So the first problem is the battery fire crisis that's currently engulfing our city. Over the last 5 years, there's been an incredible increase in the number of delivery workers, and one of the amazing things is they're using e-bikes to get around. There's been this incredible bottoms-up adoption of electric mobility from a group of folks who you don't necessarily think of as being primary customers for it. And that's actually a result of years of investment in infrastructure on things like bike lanes that make it the fastest way for them to do their jobs. But when they buy their bikes, they buy batteries, they charge those batteries at home, they charge them in unsafe charging environments. It's not their fault. They don't know what, they're not necessarily experts in battery technology. But what happens is these batteries get charged unsafely, and they catch fire, and they burn down buildings. Last year in New York City, there were 268 battery fires. They killed 18 people. Those numbers are more than a 4x increase over what they were just 3 years ago, and they continue to go up. This is the definition of a crisis. The second issue that you may not have heard as much about is the affordability crisis for delivery workers. So again, there's this wonderful thing that they're adopting electric mobility, but it's expensive. Your average delivery worker spends more than $1,000 a year just to be able to charge and maintain their batteries. That's because a single battery isn't enough for them to work a full day. So they have to buy a second battery. They have to pay someone to keep their second battery charged in the central business district so they can go retrieve it. All in all, they want to be adopters of these types of technologies, and they want to continue using them, but it's expensive and it's not easy. And over the last year or two, as it's gotten harder, you're starting to see sometimes a shift away from that, back towards gas-powered mopeds, towards two-stroke engines. We're starting to see a step back from one of the most interesting underground developments in the city in the last few years. And what we envisioned was, well, battery swapping can solve both these problems. By moving from a unmanaged charging environment to a fully closed loop managed charging environment where workers could just exchange batteries and save time, but importantly save money too. The way our economics work, we could save delivery workers hundreds of dollars a year over the cost of managing and charging their own batteries. Or at least about a year ago, that was the theory. We had had our prototype cabinet, we had gotten our batteries UL certified, but we had one cabinet live in Williamsburg, and we really didn't have that kind of operational scale to see what a municipal scale battery swapping network would look like. And that's where the Newlab and DOT pilot came in. It was really exciting when we heard that they were working on a potential pilot to address solutions to the battery fire crisis, and that they identified 4 locations, 4 very different locations, to be able to deploy solutions to the battery fire crisis. So up there, that's Plaza de las Americas. That's 175th Street up in Washington Heights. Huge delivery worker population. Interestingly, both the place where delivery workers both live and work. Over here behind me, that's Essex Market. That's on the Lower East Side, thanks to our friends at the EDC. We'll talk a little more about them in a second. Brooklyn Army Terminal, all the way down in Sunset Park, also part of the EDC. And then behind me, Cooper Square, heart of it all. One of the most high traffic areas I can think of, and a perfect place to really get a sense of what strong usage would look like. So this was an incredible chance for us to envision in a really concrete way what battery swapping in a municipal environment looks like. So how hard could it be? So putting a cabinet full of e-bike batteries in a public location is a little bit of a scary proposition to people. over the last couple years, what people have internalized is not that a battery, when it's improperly managed and improperly charged, is dangerous. What they've internalized is e-bikes and batteries can be scary and dangerous. And we knew there was going to be resistance. We knew there was going to be fear and uncertainty and doubt. And one of the things that we're really grateful from our partners at DOT, from our partners at Newlab, is that they did a lot of the hard work of going to these location partners and making sure there was comfort, making sure that they understood what was going on was an increase, not a decrease in safety, that we were getting bad batteries off the streets, out of the basements, and into the sunlight where things could be managed and charged properly. It really was a team effort. This was at one of our onboarding days. You can see Itai and Mira from Newlab, but also I want to call out Seth and Irene from DOT, who have really been working hand in hand with us from day one on this to be able to make sure that we were really successful. John from EDC. It was an incredible collaboration to be able to go from 0 to cabinets deployed on the streets in an urban environment in just a matter of months. And sure enough, just about on February 29th, that's about 4 months after we kicked off, what you're seeing here is Commissioner Ydanis Rodriguez of the Department of Transportation performing the first ever battery swap at a public station in the United States. That was an incredible moment for us. I think it's an incredible moment for mobility in the city. And with that, we kicked off the pilot. And since then, we've seen tons of usage across all of our sites. So on any given day, you can go to any of our stations. You won't have to wait more than 15 minutes to see a delivery worker pull up, pull out a battery, return it into one of our slots. Our system is recognizing the battery, validating that it's safe, validating that it's passing all of our tests. And about 3 seconds later, they pull out a fresh battery, and they're going to put it in their bike, and they're going to ride away. The whole process takes 30 to 45 seconds, so they don't have to sit around waiting for a battery to charge. They don't have to sit around looking, and they're able to work longer hours. We're going to talk more about that in a second. So this pilot is still in progress. When it's over, our friends at the DOT are going to have some really interesting data to share. I'm excited to hear more about that. But I can tell you from our perspective, we've been thrilled with what we've seen so far. Not just that we've been able to deploy these cabinets, but we've seen in this incredible uptake from the delivery worker community. We've fully sold out our allocation almost immediately, and we have seen nothing but extended interest. Number one complaint from delivery workers is how do we get more of these on the streets? We've seen high customer satisfaction and tons of usage. In fact, I say here we've done 1,000 swaps to date. We've actually now done 1,000 swaps at a single station, our Cooper Square location. We've done more than 2,000 swaps network-wide in just about 2 months. But it's not just about usage, it's about value. Informal delivery workers are telling us, and this stat is actually, it's a typo there. It's not 1+ hours a week, it's 1+ hours a day more that they're able to work. So not only are we saving them money, but they're able to work longer hours, earn more money. For someone who came here who's looking to earn more, this is a really big deal for a technology to really be able to unlock additional economic value for them. And as a startup, it's been incredible too. As I mentioned a year ago, we had good tech, we had a compelling vision, we had a real understanding of the problem we were solving, but we were still getting started. You can see here we've had some amazing press write-ups in New York Magazine, the New York Times, Technology Review, and it's had this incredible legitimizing effect on our business. Folks no longer look at us and say, oh, that could be interesting. Now they look at us and say, this will be interesting. We've had, I can't unfortunately put logos on the screen here, but we've had tons of the delivery apps, municipalities, investors, all of these things have all of a sudden materialized for us in ways we hadn't seen before. And so for us, this has really been a transformative moment, this pilot with Newlab, this pilot with the DOT. It's taken us, like I said, from being a maybe business to a this is gonna happen business. And we're just incredibly grateful for all the work that's been done to help make it happen. And we're excited to see what's next. Thank you. Oh, it's Q&A. Right on.
Hello. Do we have any questions for Hot Wheels?
Can you talk a little bit about your manufacturing network and supply chain, both for the stations and for the batteries?
I can talk a little bit about it. So one of the reasons we were able to get to market pretty quickly here is because we were able to establish strong manufacturing relationships with folks in Asia who were able to quickly be able to do the kind of R&D work here to move this over. This wasn't a straight buy this off the shelf solution. This did require some extensive work to be done, but it wasn't a ground zero R&D project. And that allowed us, that also means from a manufacturing perspective, we're working with providers who are able to go from 0 to 60 here pretty aggressively as we scale up our deployment. One of the hardest parts is actually making sure that our cabinets and our batteries are fully fire safe, and we really put a lot of R&D work into that. Ultimately, I will say our dream and our vision is to be able to move our manufacturing processes to the United States, and something that's definitely a dream of ours is to make this part of the kind of energy story here. But it's also really important to understand that if we don't solve the economic needs of delivery workers, none of this works. And so the compulsive focus on cost effectiveness, on cost efficiency for our customer base has to come first, and that is our motivating mindset. Would you talk a bit about the business model? I think you mentioned that it's free for delivery drivers now, but be curious to understand how you're thinking about the economics. Sure thing. So as part of the DOT pilot, this pilot was offered for free. I can tell you that when we spoke to delivery workers, we do, it is a subscription service. So you pay a fixed fee somewhere in the $60 to $70 a month range, and you get unlimited swaps across our network for that fee. Again, at $67 a month, that is hundreds of dollars less than what they are currently paying to buy and manage and charge their batteries. And we've validated with them that that is an incredible value for them, even before you start getting to questions of being able to earn more. The other thing I'll say is that we've seen strong interest from a number of different companies that are players in this ecosystem in subsidizing that cost, in helping drive that cost down, and helping make that continuously affordable as well. But the overall goal is a single base, simple subscription fee that allows unlimited usage is the core way we think about this. It's a fair question. So we believe the reason we're building here is because we absolutely believe that New York is the right market for this today. And it's clear that New York, from both a density perspective, there's one key attribute of the New York market I'll share that makes it a particularly appetizing market today. And it's the fact that virtually all delivery workers use only 2 different models of e-bikes. And that means that you have a large de facto distributed fleet. So you don't have the issue of having to stock 20 different types of batteries. I do believe that as you continue to see continued development in various types of electric mobility, if you can solve the problem of heterogeneity of batteries in the market, that there's actually a fair amount of opportunity in, let's say, about a dozen other cities in North America to start. But that's going to take a few years. The good news is, at least from my perspective, it'll take us a few years to just get to scale in New York. So right now, we're really obsessed with making this, providing value for delivery workers in New York, and what comes after that, we'll get to when we're ready.
Round of applause for
All right. Hi again, everyone. If you're just joining us, I'm Tom Comboy. I'm a program manager here on the Newlab team. It is my distinct pleasure to introduce this next team to you all. They're called Electric Fish. They are a company revolutionizing fast electric vehicle charging and urban resiliency. Electric Fish applied for the Resilient Energy Studio when we had an open call back in 2022. It's a collaborative effort between Newlab, the New York City Economic Development Corporation, and Con Edison that sought to de-risk energy storage in urban environments via deploying distributed energy resources, energy storage systems throughout the 5 boroughs. Electric Fish approached Newlab at an early stage in their growth, successfully navigated a pilot deployment of their energy storage-enabled DC fast charging system at Floyd Bennett Field in South Brooklyn, which they'll share more about, of course, and has come so far as a company on their growth trajectory since that application submission in 2022. So Vince, Anurag, and the entire Electric Fish team were nimble and effective team players. They were able to deftly navigate many twists and turns and hurdles that we faced along the way on the path to deploying energy storage in New York City, which is a pretty difficult and thorny process. So major kudos to their tenacity. In this pilot, Newlab played the role of connector and facilitator, keeping the multi-stakeholder coalition behind Electric Fish's efforts, working in sync to approve and implement the charger, and getting us to a deployment and ribbon-cutting moment. So I'll stop there and let the team tell you themselves what incredible impacts they've been able to achieve as a result. So please welcome to the stage Anurag Kamal, co-founder and CEO, and Vince Wong, co-founder and COO at Electric Fish.
Thanks, Tom. Electric Fish is an early-stage tech company that's addressing the climate crisis at both the intersection of climate mitigation as well as adaptation. What is really common in the industry is you see one solution that's able to do either mitigation or adaptation. But it's very rare that you have in one singular solution the ability to properly address both. Given the urgency of the climate crisis and really the scope of what we're presented against, we felt it was very important to do so from the very start. And so we designed our system to address the massive opportunity that transportation emissions still present. And so electrification remains one of the key ways and pathways to actually help draw down our transportation emissions. But what happens when you deploy all this electric infrastructure? When we see the rising incidence and severity of climate-induced disasters like hurricanes and wildfires, blizzards, pick your poison. We decided to address climate change in the context of disrupting the grid infrastructure that is also needed to electrify everything. And so we're a team of 12, but really started with 4 co-founders from 4 nations with the big global vision of working to tackle these incredibly complex issues. And so we devised back in San Francisco in 2019, just over 4.5 years ago, this idea of a hybrid microgrid device that is able to unblock and overcome some of the very real physical challenges of infrastructure. When you are trying to deploy DC fast charging, which is really able to provide fast charging speeds, you're confronted with the issues of permitting and grid infrastructure reliability and interoperability. A lot of sites need a lot of power. And so your utility, in this case Con Edison, would need to come in, perform a very extensive study to even determine whether that technology should be provisioned. At the end of that tunnel, you don't often get a permit. So we designed a system that's able to leverage a proprietary stack of microgrid-based controls, software, and battery storage to do exactly that. We're able to work with very grid-constrained sites with their existing electrical infrastructure and deploy in weeks versus years. And as a company, we really got our start in 2020 during the pandemic, so we're very much a pandemic baby. And it's really just incredible to see how far we've come working alongside some really incredible partners like the Department of Energy, NYSERDA, and Caltech. And so far, some of our notable achievements have been deploying 3 of our pilots with an average install time of 5 days. So we're again talking about single-digit days instead of single-digit years. And in the process, we've also generated significant interest, particularly amongst fleets. These are trucking fleets, dealerships, and government agencies, which are trying to unblock these critical infrastructure challenges. And we closed our very first commercial sale in March with a federal agency. And to support our ramp-up and manufacturing goals, we've also recently closed a $1.7 million manufacturing grant, which has enabled our ability to begin production in an 8,000 square foot state-of-the-art facility. This opportunity landed in our lab through the Newlab Resilient Energy Studio. So this is about a year and a half ago when we had the fortune of participating in this groundbreaking initiative to advance energy storage technologies here in New York City. We've heard a little bit about energy storage technologies already today. While some of the key considerations around safety and remain, it remains a very important piece of the puzzle in shaving the very significant peaks that we see, but also allowing for non-wires alternatives to promote fast deployment of critical infrastructure such as EV charging. And so we, over the course of a couple of months, scoped a very impactful pilot together with phenomenal partners. And so where we landed was the opportunity at Floyd Bennett Field. For those of you who don't know Floyd Bennett Field, it was actually New York's very first municipal airport and served as a naval air station to assist in the warfighting efforts in World War II. And today is an expansive recreational area that serves birders, archers, and also people who like to practice their driving because of the very generous lanes. But through the pilot, we worked very closely with Con Edison, Newlab, EDC, but also Jamaica Bay Rockaway Parks Conservancy, which helped facilitate all of the relationship building with NPS. And we also worked alongside our engineering and grid service partners at Leap Energy and Black & Veatch. I'll pass it off to Anurag now to talk about how the pilot went.
Great, thanks, Vince. Scoping and execution of pilot was majorly distributed in 6 different phases. When we got into the program in 2022, we first worked on recognizing what are the key KPIs which we need to hit, and which were deploying really quickly, getting the permits, and then finally delivering energy back to the electrical grid and doing very fast EV charging sessions. The next step was to recognize the site. Deploying energy storage without a system-level certification, 9540, is a tricky job in any jurisdiction. FDNY has very crazy stories, as we just heard in the last presentation. So we chose this site, Floyd Bennett Field, as it was federal land, and we were able to deploy and still work with FDNY to let them know on how exactly the system is safe and the new certifications are coming. We deployed the unit, and then the next step was permitting. There are 2 steps. First, to get a permit for the land use, could be Department of Buildings, and in this case, it was the federal government, which gave us the land use rights for deploying our unit. And second was to work with Con Ed to be able to import and export power to the electrical grid. This permit process went quickly, and we learned a lot. Specifically, sub-metering, are we able to actually sell energy while being a part of somebody else's meter? Then we started building the unit. A shameless plug here, we just moved to a new facility so we can build each of these units in a week now by the end of this year. But this unit took us 16 weeks to build, and we also upgraded it in Detroit, so it was shipped from there. And then we broke ground. There was a big curveball in which we could not keep working on and do a site upgrade during the birding season in the National Park Service. So we had just a 14-day window to actually break ground, install, do the panel, run the conduit. So we could get it done in 14 days. And then we dropped the unit. It is as simple as just using a forklift, drop the unit, and activating it, which is very different than how exactly a charging station or energy storage will be deployed today. The key value proposition is that we work with AC interconnection, 100 amps, 150 amps. So it's very easy to deploy a station and still do very fast charging sessions. With this, we have a short video for you and have the pilot unfold it. You already saw the footage, but we have 2 more videos for you. On the right, this is an actual looping shot of the unit, which is deployed just beside the Jamaica Bay. It is a charging desert. For a 4-mile radius, there's no other charging station there. And electrical outages also happened 2 times. While we were deployed, there was an outage during the day. We were able to demonstrate our ability to restore backup energy, and we're also bidding into energy markets. And if you had critical mass of these units deployed, then we can actually get to a place where there's no outages. And the second video is our system recording people coming to see our demonstration. We invited different stakeholders, some fleet operators, EDC, Con Ed, to come see the systems. And of course, there were some hiccups through the pilot. We are still learning. There are multiple different automakers which we need to work with. During the permitting process, we also learned that we couldn't do a sub-meter. And that is a good time to announce our new system. We have some renderings over here as well, but we plan to bring a new system back here, which will be interoperable with most of the vehicles and has 2 charging ports too. But during the key milestones which we achieved over this pilot was first that we could go live in 15 days. Again, this blows off the metrics of any other solution out there. It takes up to 2 years to permit and install a solution. We could do it in 15 days. We can remove in a day. Second, we actually interacted with the grid, delivered up to 308 kilowatt hours of energy into the grid, which is almost powering a home for 300 days. It's consuming a kilowatt hour every day. Also, we reduced the deployment time and cost to $90 per feet. Again, it's around 90% cheaper than how much it will cost you to deploy a DC fast charger right now because of the thick conduit which is required. We also delivered 107 DC fast charging sessions. We have some very happy customers. And we fed into NYC electrical grid during 2 critical emergency events. 240 kilowatt hours of energy was put, so we depleted all of our battery during that day in the critical day events. And finally, we also demonstrated backup energy support. We actually simulated an electrical outage on the electrical grid, on a live electrical grid, and were able to power it up and demonstrate backup energy. And that cascaded to us winning the Top Innovator Prize by Department of Homeland Security. We are recognized as a solution which can power critical building loads when there is an outage scenario. We also became the first ever bidirectional DC fast charger to bid into energy markets and generate revenue from it. We generated $2,000 to $3,000 every month during the summer months, and that is a very big milestone for us as it makes our business much more viable. It's not entirely dependent on EV charging demand. And finally, we are starting to sell our first unit. Vince talked about our commercial pilot, and the new system looks like this. It's on our website. It has 2 charging ports, still works with a 150 amp single phase interconnection, and it has all the container features still, so you can deploy it really quickly, remove it quickly, enables a lot more, many business models, and it has 2 advertisement screens optionally as well, so it fits the urban landscape in New York pretty well. With this, I will come back to questions.
Just so you know, we have a request from virtual to repeat the question before you answer it. So there are people tuning in. Do we have any questions for the 2? Raise your hand. Oh, come on.
So where do you see the advantage of your charging unit versus what a GoRevel tries to do? You may have heard GoRevel is taking over Tesla's charging station. Just curious thoughts if you looked at some peer-to-peer competition.
Yeah, that's one we'll have to study a little more carefully, but we're really designing our solution for these critical fleet applications where you need to interconnect with the grid really quickly, but you're also concerned about the ongoing cost of electricity. What the battery storage additionally allows us to do is to keep energy costs low by storing energy throughout the day when it's cheaper and then deploying it when it otherwise might be spiked. And then as we see increasing incidents of power outages, staying online for those mission critical operations. Something that we're also seeing interest from is use cases like the entertainment studios, where you're in the Mojave Desert or in Hollywood, you don't want to set up permanent infrastructure, so you want to be able to move everything around. A lot of chargers today can't do that. We've designed ours such that it's very easily movable with just a forklift and flatbed.
Thanks, this is really amazing. I was just wondering if you simulated the next
We need to think in terms of stages. Again, the question was, how does this infrastructure play a role in critical failure, Hurricane Sandy? Thinking in terms of stages, first we need to secure critical buildings. So 2 of these units will be able to power a hospital, let's say. And if you want to island a whole feeder that is, let's say, 200 homes or multiple buildings, then there'll be another critical mass required. Maybe 10 or 15 of these units are deployed in that whole feeder. If you want to island the whole city, then you'll need 1,000 of these units. We are working not on just the hardware, but also the controls piece of it, which can orchestrate the network effects. We already have a patent on it as well. But slowly we need to get there. We need to provide unit economics 1, 10 scale, and then go to just massive network of units which can power the city through a hurricane scenario.
Two quick questions. How much power do you need minimum to when you attach to your your next gen unit? And then in terms of your business model, do you primarily see yourself as a public charging provider that would compete with like a Tesla supercharger, or a fleet solution, or both?
Yeah. Do we see us as a public or a private use case? I think I can't give you a concrete answer. We are still early in our phases of the company. We have to slowly prove it out. Currently, our key customers are fleet operators who are buying the units directly, and they own the assets, and then they are paying for a software or maintenance subscription to us. When we have a critical mass of EV users coming to a specific site and we understand a public location well, and we can get some private funding behind us as well, in which either we have a financier funding these assets for our customers, then we can start offering public charging sessions too. But of course, we have done these pilots. This was kind of public-facing pilot too at Flatbed Field. Anything else to add?
Awesome. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Hi, everyone. I'm Mia Liu, Program Manager of Newlab. So I'm excited to introduce today GeoPower, a company that we believe can revolutionize the recovery of subsurface natural resource recovery. So you can just name a few, including but not limited to critical minerals, geothermal energy, and even naturally occurring hydrogen within the Earth. Eden's unique approach leverages both the power of electricity and synergistic effects with hydraulic fracturing, electric heating, and carbon mineralization to precisely enhance subsurface permeability, making underground energy and materials more accessible and sustainable. As you can imagine, their solution has applications across industries, but needs to be de-risked with actual data for more specific applications. So what we are seeing is the mining industry is increasingly looking underground and in need of better ways of breaking rocks, with the rapidly declining ore grades near the surface and growing demand of critical minerals amid energy transition. So as part of our efforts working with our industry partner to identify and adapt novel rock preconditioning and fragmentation technologies, it was Newlab's absolute pleasure to work with Eden in development of actually their first physical pilot for mineral recovery based on core samples from real-world mines, paving the way for their continued expansion into the mining industry. Eden's team has impressed us with not only technical prowess and dedication to the project, but is always very proactive, collaborative, and organized, while patient to meet and exceed our industry partners' expectations. Newlab has been working closely with Eden throughout the pilot, from the initiation, planning, facilitating data exchange, and sample collection, all the way to our continued ongoing conversations about extended collaboration. We've seen early results over the past few months since we now have the pulsar and everything, and are very excited for more critical learnings in the following months as Eden gears toward full-scale field tests for further commercialization. So I'll stop here and welcome To the stage, Spencer Archer, to tell you more about what we are doing about pilot. Thank you.
All right, thank you. First, I want to thank Newlab for inviting Eden to have this opportunity to present the results of our, well, not the results, the progress of our pilot, and really to give, the abstract has had a huge impact on Eden's mining vertical. So Eden, unfortunately, one of the co-founders wasn't able to attend due to travel difficulties, so I'll be giving the presentation. But Eden was founded by two co-founders, Dr. Paris Mars and Dr. Amar Alali. And at Eden, I'm the head of mining, so I help develop projects related to mining, carbon storage, and also geologic hydrogen, and I also help execute those projects on the R&D side. So Eden, like Mia said, we use electrical reservoir stimulation to enhance critical mineral mining for the energy transition. And I think I need to set the stage on how electrical reservoir stimulation facilitates the energy transition. So Eden presently today is about 35 on staff. We're divided in teams from geophysicists to geochemists to mechanical engineers, electrical engineers. We also have people in business development. And what we do at Eden GeoPower is we break rocks. Now, you're probably thinking, I can break rocks. But what if I told you breaking rocks is one of the bottlenecks to the energy transition today? And I mean to all four verticals that Eden GeoPower focuses on, from mining, which is one of the largest industries that displace rocks by breaking rocks, from boulder size, 30 inches, down to micron scale. It's hugely energy intensive. It's about 3% of the total energy demand in industry, about 50% for mining. For geothermal, you need to break rocks between the production and the injection well to prevent short circuiting and to facilitate proper conduction of heat to the fluids. For geologic hydrogen, you need to break rocks to allow fluids to interact with iron to reduce water to generate hydrogen, and also for legacy energy applications. So you may think, well, breaking rocks is easy. It's actually really, really difficult. And we do that by using a suite of methods, but this presentation will mostly talk about generating plasma in the subsurface to fracture rock. So this started in 2017 by two individuals who were doing their PhD. This might sound like some Goodwill Hunting story, but they started during their PhD program, Eden GeoPower, both geophysicists, so Amar Ali and Paris Smalls. And what we aim to accomplish is to enhance critical mineral mining and also geothermal, geologic hydrogen, and legacy energy applications. So our major achievements are we've been awarded $10.6 million in DOE funding, some from very prestigious programs within the Advanced Research Project Agency for mining, for geothermal, and also the recent release of the Geologic Hydrogen Program, both for catalysis of geologic hydrogen and also our venture into long-term energy storage. We have 7 filed patents. We have demonstrated this in the field. And so our vision of doing this technology. So I think I'll give a high-level overview of the technology. So basically, what we do in the lab scale to the field scale is we insert anodes and electrodes into the subsurface. And we produce a very high voltage between the anode and the cathode, and we discharge that energy, and that produces a plasma, which is presented here on the upper right. When this plasma is generated in the subsurface, it actually fractures the rock, and it becomes very, in different presence of formation fluids and compressible fluids, it'll fracture rocks by generating this plasma. So in the application of mining, what we see is something we want to do. If you are familiar with mining, they move tons and tons of ore per day from open pit mines to underground mines. And one approach we have for, say, an open pit mine application is we would drill 2 wells into the bench, and then we would insert an anode and a cathode and fragment the rock. If the rock is CO2 reactive, we'll mineralize CO2 and then blast and then move it to the mill where they'll have better recovery of critical minerals due to smaller particle size. So in the pilot, we use something called a pulsar in the lab scale, which is this image here on the left, which uses confining pressure to mimic subsurface conditions. We fracture the rock, and then we also do characterization after to determine the amount of fracturing. So this pilot started this year, and it's ongoing. Our lab tests are conducted in Boston, Massachusetts, from samples all over the world with our industry partners, BHP. And basically, this pilot is 3 steps. We do characterization before, where we determine how fractured the rock is. Then we fracture the rock with the pulsar, and then we do post-electrical characterization with a different set of methods, from the micro-CT to what we call the bond, to determine the bond work index, which is essentially the amount of grinding energy needed to grind these rocks to the size the mining company desires. So we have a video that goes over
We are in the middle of one of the most important transitionary periods in human history. What we're focused on at Eden is developing next generation geologic-focused solutions to help with the energy transition. Eden is utilizing high voltage electricity in order to increase subsurface permeability.
Eden is the first company to integrate hydraulic, thermal, and electric stimulation processes into one stimulation technique.
This allows us to save water, as well as reduce greenhouse gas emissions associated with traditional methods.
Eden is receiving incredible market feedback from customers in the mining, geologic hydrogen, geothermal, and carbon storage industries.
The Middle East and North Africa region is the energy hub today, making it an ideal location to seed and launch new technologies. We have successfully executed the first pilot. We were able to work with international teams. We were able to extract the subsurface resources in a cleaner way.
Our vision for Eden is to become the world's leader in sustainable natural resource recovery.
Our vision at Eden is bold, but we can't do it alone. We're always looking for excellent people to partner with. Let's break rocks together.
So the pilot outcomes. Working with Newlab and our industry partner, we were able to determine that we can fracture rock at unconfined conditions, so at surface conditions. We also determined, which was huge for us, that we could also fragment rock at subsurface conditions, because most of these rocks are found under high pressure. We also determined we can do concurrent carbon mineralization, which could unlock carbon credits for mining in the future, make mining a carbon net negative process. And the results we're seeing that we're anticipated to lower the bond work index, which again is the amount of energy required to grind rocks and fracture rocks from the open pit to the mill. And other pilot outcomes is this allowed us to de-risk the technology. It allowed us to develop IP because we needed the data to support the IP, and also most importantly to establish collaborations with the major mining companies as we produced the data and was able to show that we had de-risked the technology. So that is Eden.
Question. Raise your hands with questions, and remember to repeat the question if you can.
So we were involved with target mining technology after a couple of environmental hazards in Brazil. If I'm understanding you correctly, is you have the capacity now to be much more precise targeted mining, reducing environmental impact, which is wonderful, by the way. So my question is, the level of electrical charge needed, does that vary depending on the various ferrous, non-ferrous mining that you're doing, or the charge is consistent, if you will?
No, we do modeling. So we have a numerical modeling team and a stimulation team. And they'll go and look at an ore body, and they'll determine the conductivity of the ore body, where the water table is in the ore body. And then they'll set those parameters that's needed to basically discharge the energy. Because when we've seen that from this pilot, is we have ore samples with totally different conductivities, and the energy requirements are different.
Hi, thank you. I was wondering, on the previous slide, you mentioned some of the KPIs that you may have hit around carbon mineralization and also around some efficiencies. Are you able to get to a point, or were you able to reach a point of understanding at what level of efficiencies you achieved, or how much more work would you need to do to kind of understand the value or the outcomes?
So I think you're basically asking how much CO2 can be mineralized, say, per ton of rock.
Yeah.
We're going with the DOE target right now through the miner program, which is 10% CO2 per ton of rock.
Okay, and then I think you also mentioned electricity, like reduction in electricity or other energy use. I'm sorry, I don't remember the metric.
Oh, the bond work index?
Yes.
So that's the kilowatt hour per ton of ore. Yeah, so when we discharge the plasma into the ore body, it creates a network of fractures. So it basically makes the ore softer. So when they bring it to the mill, to the ball mill and SAG mill, it requires less energy to grind it. So they go from 30 inches to microns. Like, and the amount of energy required to do that is very intense. So we fracture it in C2, and that makes it a softer ore for them to grind.
Thank you.
One more.
Thank you. This is a great concept. So I'm going to ask this question, and it's not going to be very popular, but does this apply? Would this apply to directional drilling in oil and gas?
Yes.
Okay. And I will say, and I would say, there's a big well disposal, or water problem there. So, curious, what would be? Have you estimated on a run rate basis, and when you're up and running, costs comparison would be to traditional fracking?
So compared to hydraulic
or stimulation,
fracturing?
yeah, exactly.
So I can't give you a specific number, but this does require less water usage than the current state of the art. And there also is some directionality control as well, better than hydraulic fracturing today.
Excellent. Round of applause for Eden.
All right, that was energy, y'all. Let's give one more round of applause for Pop Wheels, Electric Fish, and Eden. That was super cool. I am learning right here alongside of all of y'all, and I think this stuff is just super cool, really awesome. I hope you all do too, because we're very lucky to be here right now. And yeah, we have one more set of demos that are about to go. And you can hit roll on the on the notes. Thank you. Amazing. Yeah, I understood most of that. No, they did a great job of explaining it. Our last group of startups are working on materials, from new forms of sustainable materials to circular economy. Materials make up 23% of greenhouse gas emissions in the US. And being in one of the fashion capitals of the world here in New York, this issue is front and center, without a doubt. The petrochemical dominant manufacturing process and the traditional linear model of rapid production to consumption to throwing out way too many materials has created literal tons and tons of non-biodegradable waste, but it doesn't have to be that way. Option one is to own 3 shirts that you wear on rotation, like me. Perhaps slightly better option two is having Newlab companies work on better substitutes, but also an entirely new system that's circular and regenerative, meaning less waste, no need for virgin materials, and a win-win for people and the planet. And speaking of win-wins, all 3 blocks that we're seeing from today are focused on things that are extremely interconnected. We can't have better materials if we don't also have better mobility to get them places and to people. And if we don't have better energy systems to create those materials. Which is why I'm super excited to tell you more good news that Newlab has been awarded some more funding from the US Department of Energy's Office of Electricity, which will enable high-capacity zinc utilization through electrode and electrolyte fundamentals. Basically, this tech will help long-duration energy storage progress forward, as using zinc is exciting because it's low cost and extremely safe. And it's still early-stage tech, but takes some problem solving. But we're up for it. Alongside Sandia National Labs, this research is moving forward to help offshore wind continue to grow. Which means maybe someday I can add a 4th shirt into my rotation that's made with energy stored in these zinc systems, transported to me along a clean trucking route, and created by one of the companies that are about to demonstrate what they've got. But that's not the only good news to share. It's time to hear from our final 3 companies and how they're changing their materials game. Let's get excited, let's get ramped up, and give them a warm round of applause.
Oh, can we hear me? Yes. Hi. Hey, everyone. I'm Sydney Grushak. I am a program director here at Newlab, and I am very excited to introduce to you SOS Carbon. And SOS Carbon was a participant in our Puerto Rico Waste to X studio, which is just wrapping up. And this studio really started very broadly. Our partner was Invest Puerto Rico, an economic development agency on the island, and they wanted to tackle the challenge of waste, turning different waste streams into products of added value. And when we started, sargassum seaweed was really not on our radar for this endeavor, but through stakeholder interviews and engagement, we saw that this was really an issue that on the ground, people were finding was really impacting local communities, industries, and habitats, and they really wanted some action around it. And so we began investigating basically what can we turn this into, and what we found is, unlike most waste streams, there really is no existing value chain for how to take this material and get it away from where it's an issue and into something new. So we actually had to think about the entire value chain, and when we started looking into this, we really found that SOS Carbon is one of the global leaders in the collection and valorization of sargassum seaweed. So they were an easy choice for inclusion in our studio, and when we started going into what would actually it take to get their technology out into the ocean to collect sargassum at the point when it's really most valuable, before it hits the land, before it causes the issues, and also when it can be turned into the most valuable new materials. And we found that one of the major hurdles was actually navigating regulatory agencies and determining the point at which this naturally occurring but over-blooming material goes from being a habitat to being an issue. And there are about 5 different federal and state agencies involved in kind of the regulation and determining kind of when that line is crossed and when it should be collected and all of that. And so SOS Carbon really came in and took the reins, and Newlab facilitated introductions to the regulatory agencies, local project partners to actually test this out on the ground and to try and collect the sargassum in a regulated and safe way.
And so they were key in kind of being the tip of the spear of proving out an entire new value chain that can turn into a new industry for the island of Puerto Rico and actually for the entire Caribbean region. And so SOS Carbon's team was incredibly ambitious and proactive and has really gained a lot of traction on the ground, working with the project partners, Palmas del Mar, which is a housing development community that has a marina and beachfront access, and so is on the front lines of this sargassum crisis. And so SOS Carbon did their pilot, training local communities, collecting sargassum, and working with local regulators in an amazing way, and really proud of the work that they've done, and they intend to increasingly expand their operations on the ground over the next few years, and in the next 3 years expect to produce over 120 local jobs and investment of at least $5 million. So to tell you more about it, I'm really happy to introduce Andres Bisono Leon, CEO and co-founder of SOS Carbon.
Thank you, Sydney. For us, it was also easy to pick Newlab, and obviously with an amazing ecosystem of change makers. We're very honored to be here today sharing our story and what we were able to achieve in Puerto Rico. With that said, at SOS Carbon, we're on a mission to propel a sustainable agriculture, leveraging the power, the potential of invasive seaweed. So, bless you. I bet all of us here today, we can agree on one thing. When we look for a nice beach vacation, we are at least expecting a nice, pristine ocean. For the last decade, that hasn't been the case, at least in the Caribbean and in major locations across the US, like Florida and Puerto Rico, that has been inundated by invasive algae, invasive seaweed, invasive sargassum. Sargassum, as mentioned, not only affects tourism, but it also affects the marine ecosystem, it affects human health, and at the end of the day, it's just transforming our beaches, the main economy of the Caribbean region, into construction zone. Unmanageable, unsustainable practices that are creating other environmental issues like beach erosion, and also affecting the local ecosystem where turtles come in and have a critical habitat. You might be asking yourself at this point, what's causing sargassum? One of the main issues I can highlight is the unsustainable practice and use of chemical synthetic fertilizers. Over 40 million tons of synthetic fertilizers end in our oceans every year. You might be asking yourself a second question. Maybe sargassum is new, maybe it's going away. And actually, the trend is telling us that it's only growing. Last year, there was a big mat, double the size of the US width, was documented. And again, volumes are just growing. Volumes are unprecedented and unmanageable. And that's where we took the step to really do something, do our part, but doing it in hand with the infrastructure that is already available in the Caribbean region to really provide a sustainable operation. So at SOS, we're leveraging a vertically integrated operation from the harvesting to the processing. On the harvesting side, we focus on harvesting the sargassum in the ocean before it makes landfall. On the processing, we're focusing on utilizing the seaweed for producing organic, natural fertilizers, more specifically called, in our case, biostimulants. Biostimulants are like saying the protein for us humans when we go to the gym, the chemical fertilizer. And with the biostimulant, we're looking to have three main benefits. One, reduce the use of synthetic fertilizers in at least 5 to 10%, increase crop yield, and also make the plants more resilient to climate effects. So at SOS Carbon, since 2020, we have been deploying our littoral collection module, or LCM for short, developed at the MIT Mechanical Engineering Department. It is a simple hardware, that's where the innovation comes in play, that adapts to local fishermen boats. Local boats are available Caribbean-wide. It's like a horse saddle. It fits almost 99% of local boats and turns them into high-capacity harvesters. Again, focus on collecting in the ocean, already where sargassum is known to be a problem, where it's already affecting the corals, the turtles, the marine life of those areas. As we navigate the boat, sargassum is collected on nets that are reusable and interchangeable, so every time a net is full, we then go and put a new one and keep going with the operation. Then sargassum is taken out, and these operations are coordinated to meet the different locations that we operate. So again, we don't create construction zones for the tourism industry. We have also been servicing power plants that are one of the main stakeholders affected by the problem. For example, last year, United States, because of a problem in USVI, United States Virgin Island, declared state of emergency due to sargassum. In Puerto Rico, as Sydney highlighted, we had a successful pilot. First, we obtained all permits and authorizations from state and federal regulators to undertake this activity. This was done for the first time ever, and we are looking forward and already setting practices in place to scale up operations. We empower and train the local communities. Again, they're a key pillar of our operations. And also we showcase how working in Puerto Rico with local public and private sector can really position us to keep scaling our operations, not only for the mitigation, but also for developing a value chain from sargassum. So again, in Puerto Rico, we deploy one of our LCMs, and Puerto Rico has many other advantages, just apart from just offering another territory. We're already operating in Dominican Republic, Antigua and Barbuda, Mexico, and and Puerto Rico. And in this case, it's another location where we can take that sargassum and supply to keep fitting into our processing. The coastal communities are a key pillar, as I have been highlighting. In Puerto Rico, we're looking to add per every system at least 10 direct jobs and really integrate them as part of the solutions that we deploy. Again, we're looking to have win-wins for all, because they also know the ecosystem where we need to operate, and we are offering formal employment to keep them incentivized and undertake these environmental sanitation activities. Puerto Rico has a lot more to offer, as I have been highlighting. Also, we're looking to take advantage from their tax incentives like R&D credits, and also their human capital and their access to developed economies like, evidently, the US. So what's now? Currently, we are on field trials for our biostimulant, working in plantains and tomato, and soon we'll be starting in banana and rice, one of the major crops consumed in the Caribbean, as a kickoff and demonstration of the benefits of our product. Our product meets EU standards, so that for impurities and everything that is required to take the biostimulant into commercial stage. And we have ambitious goals. This year, we're looking to have a production capacity of 75,000 liters so that we can keep expanding our pilots with key partners in the agricultural sector, but also transition to a commercial stage. And by year 5, we're looking to have a yearly production capacity of 9 million liters of biostimulant. By the way, the total addressable market for seaweed-based biostimulant is around $1.8 billion, seaweed based. So it's not biostimulant, it's not fertilizer, it's the subsegment seaweed based biostimulant, around $1.8 billion. And lastly, again, we're very eager to interact with you all. If you're part of or interested in sustainable agriculture, social impact, ocean conservation, or even carbon credits, looking forward and very eager to interact and meet you all as we keep developing ways of scaling our work, not only in the Caribbean, but leveraging the Caribbean to have a global reach, a global impact. So looking forward, and thank you, Newlab, again for having us.
Do we have any questions for SOS Carbon? Raise your hand, please. Oh, I see one.
Thanks for that. It was really great. Two related questions. What is the scale potential of harvesting seaweed globally per year in terms of how much biomass? And number two, you mentioned carbon credits. To what extent is carbon removal part of your business model?
So on the first one, what is the potential in terms of seaweed produced? So sargassum, that's one of the advantages of this type of seaweed. It doubles its volume in around 10 to 12 days. And well, that's also one of the challenges, right? That we have so much of it. Last year, when I mentioned that it was documented, the MAT doubled the size of the US with, they approximated that on volumes to be 24 million tons of seaweed. In other words, we have unlimited supply, if you will, at least for the scale or the uses that we're utilizing it at the moment. In terms of the carbon component, so when sargassum makes landfall, it releases back carbon and methane. If we can capture it before it decomposes, we're cutting the cycle. If also then we're utilizing this sustainable resource to replace petroleum-based products, then we're having another impact there in terms of the carbon avoidance. With that said, the carbon credit is a key part of our business model, but we have been focusing on the different steps, going along the way. First, starting by servicing the tourism sector, the power plants that affect the stakeholders on the ground. Then we have been focusing on the biostimulant and commercializing that product, and slowly also working in adding the carbon credit component. Thank you.
Do you see the application of the more organic fertilizer for topsoil reconstitution? I think there's some quite a bit of soil erosion going on in Middle America. Because you have incredible capacity, do you see using this fertilizer in farm country? That's one. The other one is, it seems that most of your application right now is for warmer tropical climate. Any usage for mild climate plays as well?
So in terms of the applications, yes, we are looking that the biostimulant can serve as to recovering the soils. And that's one of the key things that also it is doing to the crops, focusing the crop's energy on advancing its way that it pulls the nutrients from the ground. Meaning we're already seeing results in which our crops, instead of focusing on developing a long root to try to pull the minerals, it's shortening the root, given that it's having those minerals from sargassum and maximizing from the seaweed, what it can pull from other fertilizers, and then focusing the energy on the crop itself. With that said, yes, that's an application. And in terms of where we're utilizing the product, the biostimulant at the moment, our focus is just warmer locations, given our, where we're manufacturing at the time, but that's not a limiting factor. And indeed very eager to start working with farmers along those locations to showcase the benefits that we can bring to them. Thank you.
Hi. Can you tell us a little bit more about the biostimulant production process, whether it's a batch or a flow process, what the other products are besides that biostimulant, and how you, capture the carbon to make sure it's not being released during that process?
In terms of the biostimulant, we have a couple steps. First is a drying process so that we ensure we have enough supply, even though we might see cycles around the seaweed arrivals and landfall. We dry the seaweed to store it, then we pre-process it to reduce the chemical components that it has to meet EU regulations and other regulations out there. And then we do an extraction that is industrially scalable. We're not utilizing a fermentation approach or microorganisms approach, which bring challenges to the production of that biostimulant. And at the end of the day, we have done the math. Happy to expand on, during the networking, we have done the math that our process is produce less emissions than the ones that we're avoiding or sequestering. Thank you.
Awesome. Round of applause for SOS Carbon.
All right, hey everybody. My name is Brandon Kortz. I'm the head of Startup Pipeline at Newlab. So if you have portfolio companies that can benefit from the system that we've been talking about all day, I'm the guy to talk to, and I really want to connect with you. More startups are more valuable for us. I'm really, really excited to talk about Vicarb today. They're a company that came to us through our partnership with the Activate Fellowship. So Activate NYC, all of their companies have full access to Newlab for the duration of their fellowship. And that includes lab access and desks for the founders. And so Vicarb came to us through that program and really has leaned in to this system that we've built, and specifically the infrastructure here in Brooklyn. They've increased the number of desks that they've had. They have build space here. They're a really significant piece of the ecosystem, and I think most importantly, today we're focused on piloting. They've been working with us and our wonderful membership team to work with Yard Labs, the Brooklyn Navy Yard's piloting program, to actually get their technology, its carbon capture MRV technology, into the East River on the Brooklyn Navy Yard. So I'm very excited for you to learn a little bit more about that from Greg Humphreys, head of business operations at Vicarb.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Greg Humphreys. I'm the head of business operations at Vicarb. We're a startup enabling what we call fully measured carbon removal in water. And fully measured really is the operative part of that sentence. To give you a bit of context for what we do, the ocean's massive. Historically, it's been a carbon sink and has absorbed about a third of human CO2 emissions. But the issue is, as we continue to emit more and more CO2 over time, the ocean's also becoming a carbon source in certain parts. In other words, the ocean in total is now responsible for about 10 billion tons of emissions via a number of high CO2 waters. And our goal is to prevent those emissions, biogenic CO2 emissions we'd refer to them as, by removing CO2 in water permanently. Now, the founding story for this is that CO2 is very hard to measure once it enters water. It's very easy to measure in the air. We can use spectroscopy, but as soon as carbon goes into water, it takes many different forms, and water's natural carbon cycle means that it's very hard to quantify. Fortunately, we said this is a tech problem, and tech can solve this problem. I should note, I did not solve the problem. I'm the business person here, but some of the very smart scientists on our team did. So Garrett, our CEO's founding story for the company was that via the Activate Fellowship and following on from research trials he'd been doing at Cornell, went out to develop this system for direct, autonomous, and real-time measurement of CO2 in water, and integrate that system into the removal process too. So the tech accomplishes permanent and safe carbon removal in water, and it really is powered by that direct, autonomous, real-time measurement from start to finish to ensure that every gram of CO2 we have removed and will ever remove is fully measured. Our major achievements to date include demonstrating this first at a very small kind of lab scale here at Newlab, and then out at a prototype system on Governor's Island in New York. We secured our first 2 carbon removal pre-purchases, the first via Stripe Climate in 2023, and then the second very recently, last week, through Milky Wire. And we secured our first commercial deployment customer, which is hopefully going to be deployed in 2024. And that is a full paying customer who's utilizing our technology for fully measured carbon removal in water. Now, the pilot opportunity, as you can see here, is literally in our backyard. It's about 200 yards that way. It's a 15-minute walk snaking through the Brooklyn Navy Yard, but it is right outside. And this really does leverage a lot of the benefits which Newlab and the Brooklyn Navy Yard provide, and just how powerful that's been for us as a company. And to run you briefly through how the tech works, we have this on-land component, which includes our measurement system, the proprietary sense technology we have, and mixing systems. And then we also have a submerged reactor in which we add a precise dose of mineral alkalinity, which is what powers that carbon removal reaction. Scoping the pilot obviously has been a long process for the company, and as I said, started in a lab and then followed on to a prototype system which we had at Governor's Island in New York, which is what you can see us working on here. So just over the water on Governor's Island was where we first deployed this technology in a real-world setting. And that was a batch flow system, which allowed us to do about 1 kilogram of carbon removal, fully measured per year. Now, obviously, 1 kilogram of carbon removal is unfortunately not going to halt climate change. The good news is that is not the end goal for us. So the pilot we're deploying at the moment is going to be able to remove about 100 tons per year of CO2 from the water. And what we're looking to eventually is going to allow us to remove 100,000 plus tons and eventually 1 million tons plus per system of CO2 from the water. As I said, this pilot leverages a lot of the really important parts and benefits of what Newlab provides to us as a company. As Brennan noted, we arrived at Newlab because of the Activate Fellowship, and now we are not leaving Newlab, and we have been here for a very long time, and we are making sure to get every last drop out of those benefits which Newlab provides. That for us is obviously the space right next to the water. That for us is the industrial area in which we're in and how important that is to deploy industrial scale technology. And it's also the lab space which Newlab provides, the build space which Newlab provides, and the incredibly inspiring and talented community here of builders, engineers, and scientists who we've been drawing on for the past 2 years as we've been here. This specific partnership is run not only with Newlab, but with Brooklyn Navy Yard's Yard Labs, which is a program essentially helping pilots deploy in the Brooklyn Navy Yard to get tech out quickly and effectively. And as I said, this is not the end goal for us. Those 100-ton per year shipping containers which you see are effectively modular and repeatable systems that we can deploy not just to the Brooklyn Navy Yard, but at distributed locations around the world. This speaks to our business model as well at Vicarb, that we're not only looking to be the project developers here, but we want to be the technology developers. We want to build systems which measure, remove, and store CO2 and water, and put these in the hands of companies, municipalities, organizations who have the existing assets to deploy this cost effectively. And so this you can see here, unfortunately, is a render. We wish it was real. But is a system that will be capable of removing about 10,000 tons of CO2 per year in natural waters.
The biggest problem with carbon dioxide removal is we don't really know how effective it is. At Vicarb, we're really shifting that paradigm. We're saying that actually the measurement has to be part of the removal. What we've done with our low-cost autonomous technology is enable that really high-quality measurement with really low cost. This is the first technology that couples at every step of the process carbon removal and measurement. And the way we do that is by measuring how much CO2 is in that water, and then based on how much CO2 is there, adding a precise amount of alkalinity, different materials that convert that CO2 into dissolved, stable, inorganic carbon, like bicarbonate. Watching that CO2 go down, we can really provide full confidence in how much carbon is being removed.
So the final thing which I'll maybe mention for probably the dozenth time here so far is that the really core word of our value proposition is autonomy. Autonomous measurement, autonomous deployment, autonomous removal. The fact that we can use that integrated measurement system, which gives us full control and transparency on how much CO2 is in the water, to really control the dosing of the alkalinity, is what enables us to put this tech in other people's hands. Now, the outcomes from this pilot, obviously 100 tons is what we're targeting right now from May to May next year. That also means 70 billion of liters of water treated annually. Deacidified water, improved water quality, better for fish, shellfish, and other marine life. And it means we're getting to a price of below $500 per ton of CO2 removal. And we want to keep bringing that number down to make carbon dioxide removal more accessible for people around the world, but this puts us on a really strong and clear path there. And finally, and perhaps most importantly, this pilot's allowing us to demonstrate the commercial viability of our technology, meaning that we hope we complete this Stripe pre-purchase by 2025, and that as we move into 2025, we're moving on to commercial deployments. So full paying customers using these pre-purchases, which we've already secured, to enable safe, cost-effective, and scalable carbon dioxide removal around the world. Thank you very much.
Sorry, I oversee a global tech and engineering corporations. That's why I'm asking a lot of questions in all the presenters. So the game plan is ultimately augmenting oxygen in the water for more healthy water life, coral reef, et cetera, et cetera.
The game plan is ultimately to remove as much CO2 as possible. And kind of the key revenue stream there is carbon credits. So what we're doing converts CO2 into other forms of carbon and water and prevents those being released into the atmosphere as biogenic CO2 emissions. And so the short-term and long-term goal here is as much as possible focusing on deploying these systems, this controlled stream of alkalinity, then removing CO2 in the water and generating revenue via that CO2 removal. So a really one-to-one relationship between how much carbon we can remove and how much we can scale the business.
Hi, just following on that gentleman's question, are there any co-benefits to the deployment of your systems to, the local or macro level marine ecosystem?
Yeah, certainly. So the key one is deacidified water. So CO2 and water, high CO2 levels, correlates with low pH or acidic water. And acidic water means a harder environment for oysters and shellfish to grow, for fish to grow, for a lot of different forms of marine life to grow. So typically we associate acidified water as bad for marine life, and a byproduct of what we're doing, or a co-benefit, is that we end up with less acidic water. Specifically with how we deploy this technology is that we only treat based upon when we note acidic water. So the measurement technology takes a sample, notes that it's acidic, that we see elevated CO2 levels, and it's only then in which we add this controlled stream of alkalinity to ensure that we bring up that pH and down the acidity, and we're simultaneously removing CO2 by doing that.
Thanks, that was a great presentation. Just wondering, was I correct in hearing that bicarbonate is often the product of this process? Yes,
correct. So there is no byproduct, effectively, of the process, but correct, that is effectively how the chemistry works. The reaction involves dissolving these minerals into water. So, for example, calcium carbonate is one which we use frequently, often as ag lime or other forms of lime. And when we dissolve that material into the water, it disappears, it doesn't reprecipitate. However, the end reaction is that the CO2 is converted into HCO3 or CO3, so bicarbonate or carbonate, and they remain dissolved in the water for 10 to 100,000 years.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. You comment on how this reduces the acidity. Any knock-on effect to the bicarbonate soluble as a dissolved solid that you're aware of or tested?
So that, I think, is a fantastic question, and is a lot of what we think about and try to be really conscientious of, that we certainly don't want to oversaturate water, we don't want to go too high with the pH, and we want to make sure that we're treating at a safe level and safe boundaries. Certainly with where we're deploying at the moment, with a 100-ton scale on the East River, there's no risk of that because of the size of the system which we're deploying into. And it's something which we have, we are not highly concerned about as we continue to deploy because of the real-time measurement, but it absolutely is one of the things which, as we continue to grow, working with a number of partners, academic and non-academic, to make sure that we're doing also downstream modeling to fully understand the implications and make sure there is no bad downstream effects of what we're doing.
Excellent. Round of applause for Vicarb.
Hello, last startup of the day, last story. My name is Garrett Winter, and I lead all of our venture activity here at Newlab. So that means I wake up every day and think about how do we shape all the things you're seeing, the place that you're in right now, how do we shape that in service of startups to grow as quickly as possible? They walk through the door and accomplish everything they're trying to get done from a commercial, technical, team standpoint. It also means I'm responsible for figuring out how to get money into these companies, both on behalf of Newlab as well as our syndicate of investors. So really, you've seen a lot of amazing companies today, a lot of amazing technology, a lot of fantastic stories around pilots. I want to give you a little bit of glimpse of what it means to be inside the community, what it means to actually walk through the doors every single day. One of the things I ask almost every founder I talk to when I get to meet is like, what are you trying to achieve? Instead of like, hey, how's it going? The weather's nice outside. It's like, no, what are you trying to achieve as we're having our coffee? And typically they come back with like, I'm trying to fundraise, I'm trying to get customers, I'm trying to get things done. And really what we've been able to put together here at Newlab is that we can have those conversations and outcomes start to happen. So the next company you're about to meet, Renovate Robotics, I've known the founders. I've known Dylan for 5 years now. I've known Andy for a couple years. And as they're pulling together this company, first thing I asked is, what are you guys trying to achieve? What do you guys need? Andy was moving across the country from Spokane, Washington. He said, I need a place to live. And he ended up actually taking up a room in my apartment. A little bit further down the road, what do you need? What are you trying to get done? Well, we need to build things. We need to actually start putting it, actually able to get access to the machine shop and the infrastructure we have here. A few months later, what do you need? And they start asking, say, hey, we can't actually figure out, we need to build a miniature house and a miniature roof to run a robot on top of it. And okay, I know some people. We were able to figure out how to facilitate them landing here in the Navy Yard and landing what is a pilot you can actually see out in the courtyard right now. And I won't give away the big surprise of what they're building and how they're building it, but this sense of how do we actually figure out and facilitate and unblock what founders need every single day and start pulling together networks and resources to make that happen. I would say the thing, again, as the person that's finding a way to deploy money into companies, at some point, they come to say, hey, what are you trying to achieve right now? Oh, I'm trying to fundraise. And we're able to actually come in and say, hey, I know some investors, but also be able to participate ourselves as investors. And the good thing is along that whole journey, we get to know exactly who these people are, how they show up in business meetings. They bring their customers in here. We get to meet and understand the market and the customers that are sitting in the room. And ultimately, we're able to see how they're working, how they're building, understand their technology. And I can tell you, like, from unequivocally, Andy and the team that he's built is some of the best engineering, fastest talent, and best roboticists that I've worked with in my career, of working with hundreds of companies in the deep tech space. We're able to see that firsthand in a very different and mature way that any other investor would kind of guess in what they're investing in. We actually know every inch and understanding of who these companies are. And I will tell you firsthand, like, I will invest in whatever these guys build next, after this next company, and continue to find a way to invest in this company as they keep going forward. So with that, I'll let you tell them what they're actually doing and introduce Andy to tell you about Renovate Robotics.
Thanks, Garrett. That was really great. Oops, I went too far. So we're Renovate Robotics, and we are automating installation of roofing materials on residential roofs. I'm Andy Stoltz. I'm the founder and CEO here, and I run the company with my co-founder, Dylan, who's in the back. I lead engineering, product, and product development for the company, and then Dylan leads business development and all the customer conversations. I'll go ahead here. My background is in robotics and automation. I've been doing it for 12 years. I started in the aerospace industry building big machine tools that build airplanes, but I've also worked in 3D printing and food automation. But the idea for this company came to me when I bought a house that needed the roof replaced. So the insurance company was gouging me until I was able to get that roof replaced. And at the same time, all the contractors were booked out for 10 plus weeks in the area. When they finally did show up, there's this army of people doing this really dangerous, really repetitive work at height. And the roboticist in me just starts looking at it thinking, there's got to be a way to build a machine to do this safer and faster. So that's what I set out to do. And what our tech accomplishes is that we're able to do this autonomously. We can install it safer and faster, as I mentioned, and then you can also verify that it was installed correctly. And this is important because insurance companies, especially in the face of climate, are demanding higher levels of installation from contractors. So, and that's because roofing is really a climate-driven industry, and so the more severe and frequent weather causes more damage, and insurers are the ones that kind of push the standards forward. What we've been able to achieve so far to date is we've trained a full-on AI vision model on the system. We've done indoor testing, and then as Garrett mentioned, we're doing outdoor piloting right now. So the opportunity that Garrett started to tell you about was this journey that I've been on for the last couple years. Initially, we landed at an accelerator called HAX in Newark, New Jersey, where we worked for the first year. And then at the end of that year, we closed a $3 million investment round that got us thinking about what that next level of the company was. And for us, that meant getting more space for prototyping, access to machine shops, prototyping shops, access to good talent, and we zeroed in on the Navy Yard. And then along with that, we saw this space around us where we could move outside and start testing this in more real-world scenarios. So the scope of the pilot that we laid out as we started thinking about this was that we needed outdoor lighting so that we're testing the vision system in real-world situations. We need to replicate the transportation setup and utilities of the system like you're running on a real, someone's real house. And then we need sustained access to this site for at least a year so that we could be out there on a weekly or sometimes even a daily basis testing our robot. And we wanted easy access so that we could bring in customers, investors, corporates to show off and evaluate our technology. So what we landed on was, with Garrett's help and with Newlab's help, we partnered with Brooklyn Navy Yard and their Yard Labs program. We rented 3 parking spaces behind Newlab, where we built, a test roof, 400 square foot test roof, and able to start to accomplish all those goals that we laid out. This is our system actually on our very first day of testing, just doing a dry run. And so what we're able to do here is deploy our robot. So it mounts with these anchor points around the plane of the roof. The robot initializes itself by finding the coordinates of those anchor points, and then it's able to synchronously move itself around the roof. When it drops down there, that's it picking up a shingle, pivots around, places it on the surface, and nails it to the surface. This was about a month ago when we just started running this, and now we're actually fully placing shingles, and we ran a demo today, and so there's actually shingles out in the courtyard that we put down this morning. So, and we're only just a couple months into this pilot, but we've already made a ton of tangible progress. In those months, we've signed 10 LOIs with roofing contractors across the country. These are people who are impressed with the progress that we're making, see the value in the technology, and want to be part of those pilot programs. We're also in the process of negotiating strategic partnerships. This is both with corporates and with industry groups. And same thing, the ability to see us use the technology like we're going to in the real world goes a long way. Today, we actually have a group called RT3 here. That's the roofing think tank. And so that brings in a bunch of industry people, and we're able to stand back there around the robot and hear that feedback from across the whole industry. And this is also facilitating fundraising on the back of all this progress. And this is really just the start of our journey still. So we're at kind of phase 1, which is the demonstration projects. And so that's one robot operating kind of parallel, close to the same speed that a human roofer operates at. Where we'll be expanding to soon, like in the next 4 to 6 weeks, we'll do our first subcontracted project in the real world. And we plan to kind of ramp up subcontracting so that we'll be doing around 5 robots with the goal of hitting 3x productivity in the next 12 months. And then the big potential here is to expand to thousands of robots across the country at much faster productivity levels than human crews. And I should also mention that we're just starting with shingle installation, but there's a huge opportunity to expand across materials and across roofs across the whole country. And we see this both as an opportunity to address the damage caused by the severe climate, and then to also upgrade those roofs to new, more modern materials. So we're repairing roofs, and we're also, on our roadmap, is installing solar on top of roofs as well. So that's what we're up to. We'll be in the back during the networking and the tours. So please stop by, take a look at the robot, and then happy to answer any questions. Thank you. Yeah, so the savings here is that we can double the productivity of a roofing crew. And so that means you can get the job done in the same amount of time with half the people. We don't have as good of numbers on the material savings, but they're already pretty efficient, especially on the shingle crews, but we'll be like marginally better than that as well. Yeah, really good questions. So where we're at right now is we're demoing functionality to begin with, and then kind of designing for like that next phase, with that next phase in mind. So you can see, this is our second full generation prototype, and we took a big step forward in terms of weatherization, but we're not all the way there yet. So right now, what we're doing is we're sourcing all of our custom components, sheet metal parts, machine parts, mostly from overseas shops, and then we're doing all the final assembly here. we're working with, we have a couple advisors with contract manufacturing backgrounds. And so as we spool up, we'll engage with contract manufacturers. One of the things that we did with this latest generation of hardware is we designed in a lot more modular way. And so each of those, you could see each of those anchors was one assembly. And then even on the robot itself, we have an end effector assembly. We have a material hopper assembly. And so we can break the system into more modules and ship those modules off to contract manufacturers as they become, as each module becomes finalized. And then we can also either internally or externally do the weatherization of those subsystems one system at a time as well. But I think what's important is to get the functionality right before you invest the time in the productization or ruggedization. And so kind of one step at a time.
Any last questions for Renovate Robotics? A round of applause.
All right, keep that applause going for all of our incredible demos today. How are we all doing? We feeling okay? We still hanging in there? You know, if you're anything like me, if you sit for more than like 30 seconds, it tires you out. I personally won't be offended if you start stretching, do a few quad stretches, touch your toes. Only do it while I'm talking. But we got a few more exciting things to come. And yeah, let's start to intro it. So 8 demos down. What do you say, another 8 to go? Or no, I'm just kidding, I'm just kidding. As great as those were, there's only so much time in the day. But one more huge thank you to everyone that got up here and for giving us a peek into your worlds, and to all the incredible teams, keep doing what you're doing. Great work. I'm also sad that the demos are over, but thankfully that's not the end of our programming today. Shake it out and keep your blood flowing, because up next we're gonna have 2 closing keynote panels that you're gonna want to be alert for. I won't let you fall asleep for them. And after that, we're going to have tours of this space that you definitely don't wanna miss, and walk around this one-of-a-kind building that, again, literally used to build Navy ships exactly where we'll be walking. Still not over that. But first, it's panel time. Your first panel will tackle the style of innovation from the corporate side, and your second panel will explore driving economic development through place-based ecosystems. Enjoy.
Historically, automobiles of all shapes and sizes were a one-purpose asset, mobility. People bought them so they could drive from place to place, and they were still parked most of the time. An electric vehicle has 4.5 power walls under the hood, and they come free with the leather seats and the air conditioning. And then that energy, that battery just sits there the rest of the time. And I always thought, what are other things that you could do with that vehicle? What are the other value streams you could extract from that vehicle? The biggest challenge to scale deployment of renewable energy in this country is that we need to have a place to store the energy, because it's only generated when the wind's blowing and the sun's shining. But if we had a place to store all that energy for when customers actually need it, then we could deploy lots of wind and lots of solar. That's where V2X comes in.
Fermata Energy is a vehicle-to-grid, vehicle-to-building, vehicle-to-home, vehicle-to-everything company. We provide technology that lets you charge an electric vehicle normally, but you can also discharge it to do things like power your house or sell your energy back to the grid to help support renewable energy and make money from a parked car. And then actually make that vehicle lower than the cost of an internal combustion equivalent.
We interact with the utility programs, the buildings, the vehicle. We pull all those pieces together, have advanced mathematical algorithms to be able to predict when the building loads are going to be high or when the utilities are going to need electrons. And then we have to coordinate with the vehicle owner to protect their ability to drive their vehicle when they want to drive it, as far as they need to drive it. The way we've been doing electric vehicles so far, it's good for the environment, but it also is going to absolutely destabilize the grid. That's a huge problem. However, bidirectional EVs with bidirectional chargers managed through a vehicle-to-grid services provider, whole different story. What Newlab does is they connect big corporations with emerging technology in an actual meaningful way where the two aren't just introduced to each other, but they do something together that they both benefit from.
One of the first things we did with them was participate in a Verizon 5G studio where we basically took this technology, took our charger, took our software, and went to their facility in the Navy Yard in Brooklyn, hooked it up to the building, and started managing the load of the Newlab building with a car. 3 months later, Verizon's on our cap table. We're doing a bunch of amazing things with them. This could actually become the power lines of the future.
And if we can start to do it at scale, with the massive amount of storage that sits under the hood of parked electric vehicles is more than we're going to need to be able to completely transition to renewable energy on the U.S. power grid.
Hello. Everyone's still up? A lot of energy, right?
Come on. Shoot.
This is going to be high octane. We got Elise Neal here. She's back. She's one of the OGs in terms of industry partners for Newlab. We'll talk a bit more about that. And John Wheeler, one of our favorite founders here at Newlab. So it's great to have the gang back together. I just want to say that to both of you. Thank you for traveling from outside of New York to be here with us today.
No problem.
So quick intros, I'm Satish Rao. I am the Chief Product Officer of Newlab. I head the department that does a variety of our applied innovation activities, and this is pairing enterprise, governments, and corporates that are looking to be early adopters of technologies with our great startups that are in our network. And so over to you, Elise, for a quick intro.
Hey, I'm Elise Neal. I'm the Global Head of Strategy and Innovation for Panasonic Well.
I'm John Wheeler, the co-founder, Chief Financial Officer, Chief Strategy Officer of Fermata Energy.
It's amazing. I got to get some more titles on my line there. So Newlab has built a really interesting model, almost entirely predicated on a few certain pillars when we talk about investment, infrastructure, and industry, and of course, at the core of that, the amazing DTEP startups that we work with around the world. But in order to make some of our programs really work well, there has to be certain things set up on the corporation side as well. The ability to be able to ingest technologies in a meaningful way, an ability to kind of create that culture internally around innovation and how you actually develop a strategy to integrate those things and scale them. And so Elise, when you were the SVP of New Business Incubation at Verizon, those are one of the few models I saw that were working really well and actually created a lot of that success in the program. So I'd love to turn to you first in terms of, what were the pillars that you built in that organization? What were you learning from the outside world that needed to be true in order for corporate innovation really to work? And how is that being mapped now to your role at Panasonic?
Yeah, so I think in general, when people think about corporate innovation, there's a wide variety of models that you can explore and use. One of the things that we knew when we first kind of started to engage with Newlab is you can really think about this infrastructure, not only just the physical building, but the structures and the programs and the processes that they put together as a way to feed talent, or as a way to build your IP portfolio, or as a way to just create a think tank. But we did not approach it that way. We had a set of hypotheses in the 5G future. We were really working at the very dawn of the technology, trying to figure out its capabilities and what new ways could we cultivate an ecosystem that would effectively create kind of compounding literal network effects. And instead, we treated this like a shopping mall with the longest ever integrated diligence process that had ever really occurred for Verizon and for many other corporates. And what that does, or what it did at the time, and you still do this today, is it allowed us an opportunity to then start to explore through the shepherding process of Newlab, kind of how do we think about new technology types that exist? How do we think about ways to exploit the technology for new products and services and categories? And how do I create an integrated team so that in the same way that we can create a garden and make a garden grow, we can provide some of the soil, and maybe Newlab can provide the seeded components in terms of how to go source the startups that are the right fit for our strategic interest areas. And then how do I create basically other individuals that can come alongside the master gardener to help make it grow. And that's where, when I think about the timeline for Fermata, from the time that we first met to the time that we made our first strategic investment, it was pretty quick. Because that process, that infrastructure, this shopping mall created a really incredible acceleration model for us. And so when we think about, now in my career moving on from Verizon and into Panasonic, many of you might think to yourself, well, I'm now thinking about Debbie Gibson in the 80s with my boombox with Panasonic. However, if I flew here on a United flight from Colorado, which was powered by Panasonic Avionics, if you came here in a Tesla, you were supported by Panasonic, who powers all of the batteries for Tesla today. If you drank a beer last night, a Budweiser, that was delivered through Panasonic's global supply chain management company, et cetera. So it is a $60 billion global enterprise that really started over 100 years ago in hardware and is now leveraging Panasonic well as the tip of the spear to help kind of think differently about how to empower families with new technology type software and services in order to create that universal wellness solution for a company that's over 100 years old. So the same corporate innovation models and the same way that we used and leveraged Newlab then are the things that Satish and I are now talking about kind of in my new era at Panasonic Well.
Amazing. And John, like hearing that coming from Elise, you're on the other side of the coin there. You're constantly out there trying to work with large enterprises. You need them to be your customer. You need them to be your investors, your scale partners, whatever it may be. You know, maybe you can give a perspective on the approach with Verizon versus perhaps the other enterprises you've been working with. What felt different? What felt unique? Kind of speak to how that corporate innovation model has affected you in the business.
Yeah, well, you know, when you look at Verizon, a lot of people, you know, think they're just a wireless company, right? Someone you pay a monthly bill to every month. But the truth is they have, it's probably 10 different businesses. I mean, they have, of course, the connectivity business. They have a whole telematics business with vehicles. They have an advanced metering infrastructure utility business. They have connectivity through vehicles and telematics going back to the OEMs. So there is a tremendous amount of different verticals that they try to leverage off of their connectivity. And once we started working with them, you know, immediately one of the first things that happened, like right from the get-go, is we got that visibility, and we got to go to things like Distributech, which is a huge grid infrastructure expo every year, and be in Verizon's booth. And I mean, just that alone, having, you know, a charger in our software be showcased with someone like Verizon just gives, you know, a startup credibility, where if we're going to start getting a customer or working with somebody else, having, you know, that type of look, that type of visibility just enables lots of different things. We are working on a lot of different things with Verizon. Nothing to announce right now today, but there is so much ground that we could cover with a company like that, that good things are going to happen.
So let's do a bit of a play-by-play. So we're talking about the end of the story. Let's start from the beginning, because I think it's one of my favorite examples of how it kind of came together in the program. So Newlab, we launched what we called a 5G studio with Verizon. Elise Neal was the SVP of the new business incubation department there that was tasked with building new solutions on top of the 5G network. You were looking at Industry 4.0, mobility and energy, and you came to Newlab and said, hey, you know, we could use your help around the hardware strategy side. How do you bring the hardware businesses to the table to really leverage the 5G network and the other products and services that Verizon has to offer? And the other part of the flywheel is we want to install some antennas in your building, which I thought was super cool. One of them might have punched a hole in our building that's still leaking today.
TBD, yeah.
And so that's something that we need to check
deniability.
on.
Yeah.
But what that built was we had one of your largest test beds here in the building, and then we went out to the world and started looking for startups across these spaces. We came across Fermata Energy, a bidirectional EV charging system, and we talked about how 5G Edge could be leveraged to kind of enable the technology performance, the product performance of what they were building. And so I'd like to just start with you. What would it look like on your side when you're looking at a bidirectional charging system? How does that strategy then turn into something internal?
Yeah, and maybe even before we went down that path, it was, hey, we think that there is something magical in terms of the working model here at Newlab. We have some hypotheses, Satish, and one of them at the time was, we think there's a play in energy. We think that 5G, which is a very unique technology, which has very discrete use cases, it is not like 4G, it's fundamentally different, and so we are looking for really, really specific accelerated use cases that can help deploy an ecosystem. So we had a hypothesis around energy. And we spent quite a bit of time kind of going back and forth around, hey, we think there might be something in V2X. We had developed some strategies internally, but frankly couldn't get them from PowerPoint to product, like at all internally. And so we said, can you help us? And so as he then went and curated the market, coming up with Fermata, it was like, okay, They have a really interesting play as you think about a combination of hardware in terms of the physical infrastructure itself, in terms of the battery and charging components. It had this software element, which was really exciting because we knew that that was an area kind of up the value chain that Verizon wanted to play in. And we knew at least that it might have an interesting 5G applicability. And so that three-pronged component, which is the same things that we're looking at, you know, pretty much when you think about infrastructure in general, it allowed us to say, okay, how can we then prove whether or not do you actually really need 5G in order to make this work? And thankfully, John and his crazy team of bandits were up to the task, because it also takes a willing partner on the other side to say, hey, we have a hypothesis. Please don't think of me, like I cannot help your wireless bill, but I might be able to change the course of your company. Just stay with me. And so how do we kind of engage on that path? We met with a wide variety of players that you brought to the table, and we're really in the same way that, again, we kind of think about this as a shopping mall. We're looking at it from a corporate innovation perspective to say, who do we want to date for a little bit? Who do we want to kind of like go around the robin with? And I think we're looking for what are the innovators and entrepreneurs that bring that special something, who are the risk takers. And also when we were looking at the business, it was immediate to try to figure out, for me, trying to sell this internally, which I think we'll get to maybe a little bit later, is there an immediate opportunity for me to say, this is the customer? And if I can make Verizon the customer, if we can I see Verizon using this technology that gives me a leg up so I can prove an immediate value proposition within my span of control? And Fermata Energy kind of hit all the boxes.
And so, John, you're coming from the other end. We're approaching you. I think it was in a Ford workshop we first heard you speak, as another program we were running at the time kind of pulled you aside and said, hey, we've got this other opportunity that might be interesting with Verizon. How did you perceive that? How did you start to think about how that could be a real strategy? How did it lead to the use cases you ended up piloting?
Well, to be honest, at first, you know, this was at the end of 2020. And, you know, we were trying to do a lot of different things. And, you know, I've never heard of Newlab. I heard of Ford. But we were, you know, concerned, like, you know, is this nothing, another distraction? Oh my gosh, we say yes to too many different things. We got to focus on what we got to focus on. But thank God, we said yes, let's do this. And, you know, I don't regret it at all, because that 2021 was probably the most transformative year we had at the company. And where we were in 2020, I mean, it was tough in 2020. And 2021, you know, still the middle of COVID, we were in the middle of doing a Series A, and we with Carlyle, it's a little financial firm that was in thorough due diligence all year long, and then having this opportunity to basically showcase our stuff. You know, the stakes were very high, right? But you have this stage and this chance to write a story, culminating in a really great outcome in September. And that spurred everything and really moved our company really to the next gear by the end of that year.
So let's keep going. If you can describe the pilot itself, like how that came together. You both can both jump in, how we designed that pilot together. And let's just tell the story of what ended up happening that day in the building. I think it's worth the audience hearing that. It's sort of a magical moment that led to real business outcomes afterwards. So maybe you can start with how that pilot came together, and at least please jump in.
Yeah, so what we did was take basically our system, our cloud-based software system and hardware and car. We connected it to the building, and then put all our software in the cloud and ran it over 5G on the AWS edge compute system to basically see how fast we could get that response time. You know, the grid moves at the speed of light, so being able to control, you know, power loads, when things turn on and off very fast is very helpful. And we got, you know, response times under 100 milliseconds. Is that important? What does that mean? Well, one of the things, that is basically the response time that a utility substation needs in order to respond to different conditions in the grid. So in a sense, we can take an EV and turn it into a utility substation, kind of. Now, here's what happened, okay? This pilot was set up as a cohort, and we joined it, and at the beginning, you know, the prize at the end was, I'll just say, a very, very big meeting full of VIPs that only 2 or 3 of the teams would be selected to do. If you made it that far on, like Survivor Island, you're going to make it to the final rose ceremony and get a chance to really demo in front of some people that could affect the course of your company. So we did that, and every couple of months, a group of senior executives would be of higher importance would come, and then the final day came to do that demo. And this was again in the middle of COVID. So the week before, I was living out of a barn in Virginia, isolating, because a lot was riding on this. Like, I can't get COVID and screw this up. And then, that day came, and we set up, everything was working, and that was September 1st, 2021.
Okay, pause right there.
There you
okay,
go.
so on my side, I'm like, hey, Satish, I think we're gonna turn this thing up. We're gonna give some exposure to Newlab, and literally I think it's because I'm just so crazy. I went to my boss, the CEO of a Fortune 15 company. I'm like, hey, your next board meeting, I got it. And he's like, okay. And I said, we're gonna host the Verizon board meeting here at Newlab. I'm gonna go ahead and need like 3.5 hours, and I'm gonna blow your socks off, and I promise I'm not gonna embarrass myself or the company. We're gonna do it. And maybe I batted my eyelashes, I don't know, but it worked. And he was like, okay, great. So the whole time we're like, this is gonna be a really big deal, because it was my first time really going out to the board to say, okay, what we're doing here is not child's play. This is not some other little lab or some other think tank and like, this is gonna be cute. I'm talking about, if you want me to change the course of the company and really be an innovator, we're gonna have to all get along, from the tippy top all the way down to the lowest level employees in the mailroom. We've all got to believe this thing. So we bring the board here. Okay, continue.
Yes. Yes.
On a fateful night.
And we didn't find out that until like, I think a couple of weeks before. And then that's when I stopped sleeping for a couple of weeks. And then we come up, here's me and Daniel, our software folks, getting ready, trying to, and I'm, the week before, pacing back in the barn, trying to think of what the heck I'm going to say. Now, like I said, that was September 1st. So why that is an important date is because that's also when Hurricane Ida had just ravaged Louisiana. And there were transmission lines in the bottom of the Mississippi. The V team was trying to get communication back online in Louisiana, which they were doing. They're really good at that. That's the first thing you need to do when a hurricane ravages. You got to get that communication, get the cell towers back on. But now that hurricane had moved up and now was over Brooklyn the night of that meeting, and it was actually a tragedy because that night Brooklyn flooded and some people lost their lives. But we, from our perspective, we had never tested, our system in the middle of a hurricane, we have never done a live demo like that, right? You're not supposed to do live demos. You're definitely not supposed to do them in a hurricane. But we did it. It worked. The tech worked. And
we're talking like biblical proportions of rain, people. Like, this is... we're screaming at each other because we're trying to talk over the sound on the metal tin roof.
It's like tap dancing on the roof whenever it
There's
rains.
like flooding that's happening because we may or may not have punched a hole in the roof when we installed the 5G antenna.
It's still there, the
I
leak.
mean, yada, yada. And so literally, like, the power is flickering, and we're like, is Vermont Energy going to save the board demo? Is this going to work? Because the whole discharge component, like, it literally was the use case.
Yeah,
It was,
no, that was-
we have a disaster and require recovery in the off charge from the vehicle that is supposed to power the building over the 5G technology.
Yeah, and help power the building. We can't power the whole building with a car, but yes, that was the demo, and we were powering the building and the other demos. It actually worked, and it actually ended up. We left it on all night long, and it actually. I came back the next morning. I swam across the BQE, which was underwater, and it was still running. And actually, it's still running to this day. Right now, there is actually one more demo left, and the demo is happening right now. We're actually powering some of the building right now managing the load of the building with our system, next-gen system outside, and making money doing it, actually.
And it was one of my favorite stories because the way it come together that actual day, and of course there was an outcome. Verizon ended up investing along with Carlyle and continues to be a partner. And so, Lisa, you and I were talking this morning. You know, what we try to really push at Newlab is that these aren't pitch decks, these aren't science projects, these aren't just inspirational founders. They're building real technology and real businesses. And in essence, it's a real opportunity for enterprises like a Panasonic, like a Verizon, like a Ford, or whoever it may be. So how do you tell the corporate innovation folks in the audience, like, well, how they should be looking at businesses like John's in terms of an opportunity?
Yeah, I think there are 3 fundamentals of corporate innovation that are required in order for it to be lasting and to be systemic throughout the company, because I don't know about you, but like, why would you invest so much if you just want it to be a fly-by-night, you know, kind of experiment? So the first thing is it really requires full cultural alignment. So it can't just be the CEO who's interested in playing around with new toys, and it also can't be from the bottoms up of those individuals just saying, hey, I really need some new ideas. It really has to be embedded as a cultural framework throughout the organization. So the majority of time that I spent was really around socializing, expectation setting, nurturing kind of inside of the company. Kind of how do you think generally about innovation there? The second pillar is that these are real businesses. It's not just, especially with a company like Verizon, who's deployed this new whiz-bang 5G technology, but isn't quite sure exactly at the onset what it's going to be used for, or Panasonic, who's uncovering new ways to leverage AI and chipsets. You can't really be a technology looking for a problem to be solved. It's like, how do we really think about pairing those customer-specific problems and bringing those new businesses to life in order to actually cultivate an ecosystem? And then the third is thinking about the metrics. It's like, if it's all just about net new business models and net new revenue, you're going to miss. Full stop. If it's only just about developing new IP, you will also just miss. If it's just about talent, or if it's just about investing in a return on, like all of those things, it really has to be this diversified model of metrics. And one of the things that is so powerful about the working model here that we embraced at Verizon and are also embracing at Panasonic well, is this fully embedded notion where you've got to, like, if you're going to do it, you got to do it. You got to like really do it. I staffed people to be here. They didn't live with John at the barn, but they were pretty much living here. They were here. They felt like they were a part of the Newlab team. We were literally apprentices to the gardening and the care and the feeding of what happened here. You cannot replicate this model. If you think that you're just one cute capital investment, one little like, you know, like ironclad building away from innovation and you can cultivate startups, do not be fooled. There is magic that happens in the process, in the cultivation, in the branding, in the just enough far away but still close enough that happens here and in places like Newlab that will change the course of your company, but you got to go all the way in. You cannot dip your toe.
I appreciate that. That's perfectly said, and I think the more we see those corporate models in the world, it provides more opportunities to folks like John, the companies you're building. And so, John, last word to you. What would you say to also the corporate enterprise partners in the room that could be future partners of Fermata?
Yeah, well, especially a company like us, we can't, the nature of what we do specifically, and I think many companies that are trying to solve climate change or these, systemic issues, you can't do that without working with large companies to change them and to change the way they offer their products. We are at the intersection of mobility, energy, grid. We have to work with large automotive companies. We have to work with utilities. We have to work with energy companies. We have to work with grid equipment companies. And we have to bring all of those together. They are in many ways our customer, just as much as the end user or driver. So that is a huge challenge for us. And what Newlab does is allows us to start writing the first chapters of that story and then bring someone in like Verizon or Ford or whomever you have here, not only to help write the rest of it, but to also make it come true. Because that, if you don't take it to the next level and get that investment and get that working relationship to do it, it's not going to happen.
Amazing. I told you it was going to go fast with these two up here. That is it for us. So thank you so much for listening. Thank you, Elise. Thank you, John, for the panel. Great job. Thank you.
Newlab at Michigan Central is where innovation is thriving and where Detroit's future is taking shape. In just 1 year, we have 93 startups that are leveraging the resources like this prototyping shop to build their solutions. That's a 272% increase since April of 2023. Michigan Central is putting Detroit at the forefront of innovation in mobility, clean energy, and materials, with the creation of solutions and the advancement of the underlying technologies. We take tremendous pride in creating an inclusive environment. More than half of our startups are either women-owned or have Black or Latinx founders. Through our partnership with the state of Michigan and the city of Detroit, Michigan Central is able to offer programs like our Founder Fellowship, which is offering entrepreneurial opportunities for underrepresented founders. The startups at Newlab at Michigan Central have raised a combined of $616 million in 1 year. That really puts Detroit on the global innovation stage. This is Newlab, the center of deep tech innovation at Michigan Central.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you guys have been enjoying today's program. My name is Sahil Jain. I'm on the strategy team at Newlab, and I'm super excited to be speaking to Carolina and Jeff today. I have to say, Carolina and Jeff, you two individually have been probably some of the coolest, most inspirational people I've had the chance of meeting while I've been at Newlab. So thank you for our partnership, everything we've done together. I'm so excited for this conversation.
Well, that was really nice, but we feel the same way.
So before we get into it, maybe if you two just introduce yourselves. I think, Jeff, I know you got a chance to speak to the audience previously, but and then we can kind of get into today's conversation.
Yeah, cool. Well, I'll just kick it off real quick. Jeff Douglas, I'm CEO, co-founder of Mythos AI. We're a Newlab portfolio company, and Michigan Central really sponsored our main pilot in Michigan that we pulled off.
Carolina Plazinski, I'm the Chief Operating Officer for Michigan Central, and I also head innovation, all the innovation work there.
Carolina, first of all, as everyone just saw in the video, we just hit the 1-year anniversary of our partnership in Michigan through the facility. So congratulations, first of all.
Oh, same back at you. It's been a journey, huh?
It has, yeah. And Jeff and the team at Mythos have been one of many projects that we've done there that kind of demonstrates the magic that's happening in Detroit right now. So that'll be kind of the crux of today's conversation. But maybe before I get into some questions, I think for the audience here, the red thread that connects the three of us and what we've been doing. Last year, we worked with a few different experts in the logistics and the maritime sector to form kind of a thesis and a perspective around where are some of the critical challenges today in supply chain resiliency, and thinking really about a future where we can hopefully avoid disasters such as the one that happened a few weeks ago in Baltimore, and really thinking about how do we future-proof the way in which people and goods are moving across the world. A core part of that thesis was this idea of how do we kind of disaggregate this movement and logistics networks and supply chains and nodes away from kind of single points of failure, large ports, really think about leveraging inland waterways, rail networks, moving things off of roads. And so this development and research that we did really underpinned kind of where we thought the state of Michigan had a unique right to win and a unique right to help drive technology commercialization. As a part of that work, the team at Michigan Central with Carolina and Newlab formed a partnership with a small port 30 miles south of Detroit called the Port of Monroe. For those of you that don't know and haven't heard of this small port, it is actually going to be the state's first marine container terminal. and additionally has a customs border and protection facility as well that's being developed there. So it's going to be a really interesting and strategic node for the movement of goods in the Great Lakes and opening up really supply chain networks that haven't yet existed on the Great Lakes and St. Lawrence Seaway. And so through that partnership, we've developed kind of a living lab down there in the port, and with Michigan Central have started to source technology companies like Mythos AI that can start to deploy their solution in this environment. And so I wanted to kind of provide that context for this conversation. And I think really what we'll be discussing today is this idea of building these kind of place-based innovation ecosystems where we can align infrastructure, partnerships, both public and private, in order to help companies scale as well as drive economic development. So with that context, Carolina, I wanted to maybe have you talk a little bit about the origin story of Michigan Central. What was the inspiration for building this? How have you been working with Newlab in the past year and beyond?
Yeah, sure. So Michigan Central's 30-acre campus in downtown Detroit, and it really goes back to the vision of Bill Ford. It's very rare that you find a corporate company that invests, a private company that invests $1 billion into something that is an open platform. And that's because of his vision. Bill Ford had this vision that the future of mobility is going to be super hard nuts to crack. He is like collaboration. I mean, innovation is really focused on collaboration. And the thought that talent, there's this war for talent. Talent was leaving Michigan and Detroit. And so the train station in a separate context was always, if you looked at our book about the ruin of Detroit, the train station is on the cover of every single one of those books. It had been abandoned since 1988 and really was this eyesore. And so he bought the train station and the land around it and said, how do we create a place where we can do innovation together, where it's open, it's collaborative, and that we're really looking at advancing technologies faster in a real world environment. And so we've been on that journey for the last 5 years. Our partnership with Newlab is because it takes several stakeholders to pull something like this off. And Newlab is focused on the innovation ecosystem. And I was just thinking back for a second to something Elise said, right? When she was talking about like why it's important for corporates to, always thinking about they could do this on their own, they can't. There is a secret sauce to Newlab. And so when we scan the market to say, how do we catalyze innovation in Detroit? Newlab was the one that rose to the top, and that's why the partnership. And they have expanded their business to their second location in Detroit. And as Sahil said, we've been at it for a year.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I think maybe a quick follow-up to that as well. What I think is so beautiful about the platform in the way that it's been designed and operated is that even though the catalytic funding has come from Ford, it is truly meant to be an open platform where there are active projects going on with other OEMs in the supply chain and things like that. Can you talk a little bit about kind of that design in terms of how you guys are engaging industry today? What more are you seeking to do with industry in the platform?
Yeah, well, as I mentioned, one of the stakeholders, obviously, that we needed was really how do we catalyze the innovation ecosystem? But if you're going to get that flywheel going, you need corporates, you need industry partners. We are all facing the same problems, and that we can solve together, and we can actually fast track to solutions together. And so we've engaged with a number of partners in the different areas, multimodal logistics, low-speed aerial, low-altitude aerial, and our third one is really around the transition to electrification. And so you think about all the stakeholders that those problems touch, this is the place where you can come together and work on that. The beauty of what Michigan Central is that it sits in this location, and I don't know that this was actually designed when we bought it, but it sits in this location where we have Michigan Avenue, and for those that you don't know Michigan Avenue, it's like an 8-lane road that sits in front of, it's abnormally large, not underutilized, but that sits in front of the train station. We have the Detroit Riverfront, which is a mile to the south of us. We're surrounded by a network of expressways, and we have rail behind us, and we sit in the center of a large, very low-income urban area. So the community has strong ties, they're interested in participating. And so you put all of that together and it becomes this secret sauce. Startups covered by Newlab, industry partners, we're bringing them in based on topics. And really, the startups all need first customers. And so if I look at it through the startup lens, we want you to come solve problems with us. The startups actually need you because they need to actually deploy their solution somewhere.
Thank you so much. Jeff, I know you talked a little bit already about the specific pilot project that you did with the Port of Monroe. I'd love if you could talk to us a little bit more about kind of why was that so important to the port and to the Great Lakes maritime sector, and how do technologies like yours kind of enable economic growth attributed to that, to logistics and supply chain?
Yeah, cool. Great question. I want to start by saying this pilot was huge for us because we have been focusing our business around the Gulf states. And it turned out, without us even knowing, that Michigan and the Great Lakes had an even larger problem that we could solve, and we were able to get there first. So it's been amazing for us. This issue about our ports is that there's no digital infrastructure really in place to support them. And so we're unable to make educated decisions and planning around how to efficiently move these vessels. Literally, while we were doing our pilot project, a ship ran aground at another port a couple 100 miles away in Michigan. Got stuck, closed the channel for a period of time. That's how systemic this problem is. And so it's really about when you have a state, how many ports are there? I think there's like 14 ports in Michigan. And everybody's still operating with the same kind of out-of-date infrastructure. And so the idea is get the whole state all the infrastructure they need, and now we can start really moving goods efficiently. We can build a resilient pipeline. I use this comment that's kind of like economic security. I didn't create that. A port director said that about our technology. Oh, this is economic security. I can keep my port open. I can keep ships coming in here. So that's what this unlocks. It allows, and it also allows the states and ports that use our technology to become more competitive. And that is exactly what's happening at Monroe. The port director, super innovative guy. He's amazing, actually, Paul Lamar. I wish he could be here. And he was saying, I'm concerned we're going to lose business. We're unable to ensure the safety of our waterway. We need this information to do that. That's exactly what we provided. And now he's going out and getting future business with that same data set that we created.
Can I jump in for a second?
Please.
And so when we went and talked to Paul about a partnership for the port, we thought about what are the assets that we need to make sure that we have in our portfolio that would attract the startups to come and do real world testing. And so with Newlab, we went out and actually Sahil actually did it. We created this partnership with the Port of Monroe, and then Newlab casted their net. And not only did Mythos respond, but 50 other startup companies, because of that port, wanted to come to Detroit. So I think we overwhelmed Paul a little bit, and so we had to kind of pull back. But I mean, that is the need that's out there, is real world, real environment, areas where you can test and build these solutions.
Yeah, and I would like to add, in terms of the development, Michigan wasn't on our radar as a near term, and now we're part of Newlab Detroit. We're a portfolio company, and we're talking to shipping companies there about autonomy. We're talking to other ports about depth data. We had a conversation about how we need to get the state involved, and we're gonna be in Detroit. We're gonna be in Michigan as a company, and that's all through this effort, which is great.
And I should say, like, you know, I think our original partnership with the port was around this testing environment. And I mean, Jeff, you can probably speak to it, but I think Paul and the team at the port ended up becoming almost advisors, informal advisors, where they had a problem that needed to be solved. They had a lot of institutional knowledge as well in terms of some of the challenges. And so inherently, you found a customer as well in the Port of Monroe. And they were able to help you even think about product market fit and what were you focused on. So if you can talk a little bit about what were the challenges you thought you were going to solve when you went there, and I think you did, but you also uncovered other opportunities from a growth perspective.
Yeah, actually, speaks to the power of startups and just helping them. We solved acquisition, right? We were like, acquisition of this data is like impossible, nobody can do it. We automated that, that should be enough. We'll give the data to the engineers. we were working with an engineering company through the port, and we'd get them the data the next day, but they weren't doing anything with it. Port didn't get the data for like 2 weeks. And halfway through the project, Paul Lamar told us, you don't have a solution, Mythos AI. I'm not getting my data. I need it tomorrow. So we went, okay, we missed. We're gonna switch everything up. We're gonna automate the whole process. We're gonna automatically process the data. We're gonna put it on a web app. And then Paul went, you guys just created like the greatest thing since sliced bread. And that is the thing that all the other ports that are in our sales pipeline are buying into. It is that. And we wouldn't have done that without this. We'd still be poking around. What is it exactly that the ports need? So that was a huge, huge win for us.
Amazing. Carolina, I wanted to, you alluded to some of the other initiatives that are going on. Maybe in addition to maybe elaborating on what's in the horizon, you know, what have been for you, just generally in terms of building this kind of first of a kind ecosystem in Detroit, what have been some of the lessons that you've learned, some of the challenges and wins, and you know, how are we thinking about that in terms of continuing to kind of do the work that we've done with companies like Mythos?
Gosh, we learned so much in year one. What I thought we knew, we were wrong. And I think what we did over this past year is really listen. Listen to kind of the industry partners, listen to the startups about what they actually needed, partnered with the state and the city to understand what programs they had, where were their gaps in their programming that we had to kind of solve for if this was going to be successful. I also think that the local ecosystem in Detroit, because of this not having kind of the innovation-led economy there for so long, it was like this scarcity model. If I partner with you, that means you might get something and I won't, and I might go out of business. And I think over the past year, we've been able to break down some of those barriers. We actually created a consortium of 70 members within the Detroit ecosystem that we are looking to apply for like tech hub grants and those kind of things on. I think that, you know, we know that the physical infrastructure is what's important. So, well, I'll say it's the physical infrastructure. So in the terms of the low altitude airspace, like the Port of Monroe, we're creating this environment called what we call advanced aerial innovation. It's a 3-mile radius where we can fly drones to actually learn what are the use cases, what are the policies that you need in place, how do we get to beyond line of sight, can we get ready for this industry? And so we're doing that in a couple of different ways. I think it's the digital infrastructure, the physical infrastructure, the social infrastructure becomes really important. Understanding community, understanding what they need. We're doing some of this for the first time in an urban area and getting their voices in. And then I think finally it's the policy layer. And so this is with our state partners and our city partners really understanding how do we influence policy, what changes need to be made. And so when I think about what's in the future, it's continuing to learn and evolve and getting those things right.
Amazing, and I couldn't agree more. And everyone out there, like I think one of the unique levers, as Carolina just mentioned, is this ability to create the right kind of fit for purpose policy and regulatory frameworks that are allowing companies that are doing things for the first time ever to be able to operate in an environment where they're not encumbered by legacy policy and regulations that slow them down. And I think that's one of the many beautiful things about Michigan Central is we have special regulatory zones and we have the ability to fast track permitting with key regulatory stakeholders. And so we're looking to kind of build more of that. Not only in Michigan, around the world, because I think that is a key enabler for entrepreneurs and startups that are doing things for the first time and really kind of breaking barriers. Maybe shifting gears slightly, Jeff, I think one of the things that we often talk about in Newlab, you know, in Building 128, where we are today, and in Michigan, is really kind of the serendipity of the ecosystem and of the community. Really, you walk through these doors and sometimes you don't know who you're going to meet, you don't know what conversation you're going to have. And I think there's beauty in that unknown to some extent. Can you talk a little bit about maybe some of the individuals, organizations, opportunities that came out of the pilot in Michigan that hopefully served benefit for you?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, one was we're an A16Z top 50 AI company. That's great notoriety, right? For doing something hard and new. Like, that's huge to have the support. That was, I think, literally, I think the pilot had a lot to do with it because they mentioned it. We also connected, we're an autonomy company. At the end of the day, we want to automate ships, how they move around the globe. And we connected with local shipping companies, and we're forging ahead with relationships with those companies in the Great Lakes. So that's huge. We also got to meet Pete Buttigieg, and I got to shake his hand, and that was a huge victory. Somebody once asked me, who could you meet, if anybody? And I was like, Pete, please. And he toured the port, and the port director, he was like, you guys pull your boat out, pull Archie out, put it front and center. They invested in the port as part of this container terminal expansion. I want him to see that I'm doing everything I can to maximize the value of the investment that the government is putting in our port, and I see your technology as our way to prove that we're doing that. And so that was a huge win to be able to like explain what we're doing as a startup to the secretary. Yeah, that was great.
Yeah, that was such a cool highlight. And I think, again, back to the core mission, which is around creating this ecosystem to drive economic growth and diversification. I think one of the really interesting projects that we also got to work on was understanding some of the key workforce challenges in the shipping and maritime sector, and how your technology is kind of going to hopefully augment some of those gaps. So if you can talk a little bit around the partnerships you forged there and how you're thinking about some of those challenges in the sector.
Yeah, absolutely. So at the end of the day, why automation is needed in our domain, in maritime, is because there's a huge workforce shortage. People really aren't entering it. This is true on the survey side, it's true on the vessel operation side. And we submitted an application for a workforce development grant with a local university, with Michigan Central, to build a specific workforce, leveraging our technology, our expertise. We might even help create some of the curriculum, because our staff is very senior level developers from the self-driving car industry, about automation, autonomy, get a new generation of individuals excited. Right now, marine is like so antiquated that people want to stay out of the industry. Like, you get on the helm of a boat, there's data everywhere, what's happening? Like, no, I'm used to my iPhone, right? So if we start bringing new exciting technologies and making them available to new generation, then hopefully we can help scale that workforce as well. Like, we also need a workforce that doesn't exist while we're developing the technology. So it's a big, important part of what we're doing.
Yeah, can I add to it? I think that is another kind of the core, when I think about Michigan Central and all of the different elements we bring, skills training is significant. Everything that we're doing is introducing a whole new set of workforce opportunities, right? Whether it's, what Jeff just talked about, or if it's in, drone operators, or if it's really technologists and software developers. So part of our mandate is to think about what those future opportunities are, and to really, how do we think about upskilling the communities around us and keeping the talent here in Detroit, so that not only do we have the solutions and the partners, but we also have the talent. And that's really one of the main drivers of Michigan Central.
Yeah, and I think for startups as well, that's so beneficial, right? Because you have a workforce that has been in the mobility sector for generations, that understands the unique challenges, has the manufacturing expertise and things like that. So that's, again, I think this idea of creating stickiness in regions like Michigan that have an unfair advantage to drive the future of mobility. So I think it's two ways, and startups benefit from that, and of course the local economy. So I have two kind of final questions. Maybe one for Carolina, to ask you a little bit around what has been for you kind of the biggest highlight in terms of how you've seen the innovation ecosystem change in Michigan and in Detroit over the last year plus? And what do you think continues to need to change or accelerate to kind of realize the full vision that you built this with?
Yeah, so the first one's easier. I think it's one, I think we never thought at 1 year we would have 93 companies, some from Detroit, half of them, more than half of them from globally, coming to Detroit just to start their businesses. And so I think it was a surprise and delight, honestly. I think that was a super highlight for me. I think the other thing is, this has been a pipe dream for me for 5 years. I have been working on it on paper, and in 1 year, you walk around that building and you feel the activity. You feel the collisions that you were talking about. You don't know who you're gonna bump into that day. You see that magic happening. So it's coming to life. The challenges are, I think, still very systemic in really when I think about our policies and some of the programming that Michigan has, the state of Michigan has. I mean, when I think about what Michigan's economic development strategy has been, which is like the next big battery plant or the next big manufacturing plant. And I don't think the eye has ever been on an innovation-led economic development. And so because of that, the tools aren't there for them. The business attraction tools aren't there to get a startup to come to Detroit, or to Michigan. And so we have this partnership with the state becomes really important as we continue to identify these gaps and think about how do we close them. I mean, because up to this point, we have been using grant dollars or private investments to help close some of those business attraction dollars. And that really isn't the goal. We have to get the state behind us if this is going to be successful.
Thank you. Jeff, what advice would you give to other entrepreneurs, or given the audience we have here as well, where customers and corporations that ultimately are adopting these technologies are so critical to be involved in? What advice would you give these types of stakeholders that are important to you, other entrepreneurs that are also looking to do their first of a kind pilot in these scenarios? How should they think about these opportunities? And maybe, I think, why did you choose Michigan? Why did you choose this ecosystem? We'd love to maybe share that insight.
Yeah, I can answer that. There's a few startups here, which is cool because they've come up to me today. And I got this really good advice from one of our advisors who ran innovation at Shell. He's on our board of advisors. He's working on their shipping department. And he said, listen, Jeff, what you're going to do is super hard. So get ready for that. But here's the secret. The people that are in, that's who you dig in with. And the people who aren't in, don't give them another minute. That's not how you're going to grow your company quickly. And that was actually the best piece of advice that I have gotten so far on my journey, right? The investors that have been in, they were in, done. The ones that are, okay, I'm sorry, you'll be here maybe in the next round. I really respect you, but I need to move faster than this, right? And so, and it's the same with our customers. And so that's like my one bit of advice. You have to ride the wave. And in time, the wave gets bigger and bigger, and you start kind of washing over the others that were kind of on the cusp, right? And so to tie into your question and your second question, that's what Newlab was for me and Michigan Central. It's like, thank you guys. You have really done a lot for our company. And just basically you guys are like, this is awesome. We're going to do it. The whole pilot came together in like a month, and we were there doing the work. That's riding the wave. That wave got us in front of other stakeholders in Michigan, got us into other stakeholders around the country, got us into other investor conversations. And so like that would be the best advice I could give at the moment, I think, is you have to go with the flow. But you guys really helped us by being that. So thank you for that.
Yeah, super exciting what you're doing. And I honestly, I remember when you had a pitch session, and we talked about it earlier, the technology went crazy. I mean, it wasn't a good day for Michigan Central's technology, but it was for you. And I remember being in that room, and there was congressional delegation there was the port folks there were investors there sitting there, and I'm watching Jeff do his pitch and the video around it, and you get like this feeling like choked up, like we're actually doing this. This is happening.
You're totally doing it.
Yeah, we're actually doing it. We're doing it together.
Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you both so much. Thank you for being change makers. We need more people like the both of you in this world. And thanks for sharing everything that you guys have been working on. And Newlab, we're very grateful to be working with partners like you both. So with that, please give a round of applause to Carolina and Jeff.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. I don't know, y'all. If you are not at least a little bit more optimistic and excited after all of those panels and demos, come talk to me because I have some questions for you. That was all super cool. Sadly, this will be the last time that I'm going to talk to you up on this stage, but I will be hanging around, probably off in a corner somewhere, smiling. Feel free to come over and say hi. I would love to talk and get to know all of you. And anyone that's here for an event like this is someone that is automatically a friend of mine for sure. One more huge thank you to all of the companies and teams and speakers and panelists, and especially Newlab and all of you for coming today and joining us for this super special 2024 pilot showcase. Just as a quick reminder, we had demos from 3 blocks, which were mobility, energy, and materials. And our 8 demos were from Mythos AI and It's Electric from the mobility section. We had Pop Wheels, Electric Fish, and Eden from the energy section. And we had Vicarb, Renovate Robotics, and SOS Carbon from the materials section. We also had some great speeches and panels, and me up here trying to crack a few jokes. In a second, we'll be able to stand up and head out for a tour of the space, which I've said 3 times is super cool. You definitely don't want to miss that. There might be some insider Newlab information, so keep your ears open. Followed by some more networking, and then we're going to end with a cocktail hour, and we'll just be able to enjoy ourselves for the rest of the day. One last time, I'm Jacob Simon. It's been an absolute pleasure up here hosting with you all and getting to see your smiling faces, learning alongside of you. And let's make sure we keep this good going, use these feelings of inspiration and motivation to see what we can create, support these companies, support Newlab, and let's just keep this interconnection and the positive vibes flowing. That is just about a wrap for me. But be sure to enjoy the rest of your first and only May 7th, 2024. And let's just end with giving a big round of applause for everyone that spoke, and especially Newlab.